Chapter 348. When the palace was quiet again, Junzixing turned to Xiao Su and said, "King of England, I'm sorry to have startled you. I didn't know that the guards of Junlan Palace were so weak." Xiao Su looked at him coldly. Junzixing knew that he was in the wrong. He had promised him that he wouldn't let his sister disturb him, but he went back on his word tonight. "I'll strengthen the security and won't let anyone barge in," Junzixing promised. "There won't be a next time." Xiao Su sat down again, clearly unwilling to pay any more attention to him. Junzixing saw that he was still sorting out the documents in the middle of the night, and his anger dissipated. He could only blame his sister for asking for humiliation. "Then, King of England, rest early." With that, Junzixing left with his men. Chu Qingyan looked at Junzixing's departing figure, seemingly helpless. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Junzixing was really unlucky to be in such a mess and have such an unreliable sister. He was really drunk. "Why are you sighing?" A cold voice suddenly sounded. Chu Qingyan replied, "I just feel a little pity for Junzixing. I feel that it's been hard for him to be the emperor." Xiao Su smiled mockingly. "This is everyone's fate. Since it's already decided, there's no right to resist." Chu Qingyan was stunned. The big ice cube had always been cold and wouldn't judge others, but when she heard his words, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but turn to look at him, only to see that he had lowered his head and was seriously reading the documents. A wave of pity welled up in her heart. It was because the big ice cube felt the same way that he said those words. However, his methods were different from Junzixing's. In the same situation, he had done far more than Junzixing, and it was even more bitter. He didn't even receive a trace of gratitude. On the contrary, Junzixing received more. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. "That's right. You have to finish the path you chose, even if you have to kneel down, right?" She wanted to lighten the mood, but the unromantic person threw her a sentence. "There are 10 more records here. Take them all." What the hell? She had already decided to go to bed. That big ice cube, I'm sleepy." She fought for some time to rest. "Didn't you say that you have to finish the path you chose even if you have to kneel down? Didn't you say you wanted to stay and help?" Xiao Su looked at her, amused. Well, this was simply shooting himself in the foot. Who asked him to be so talkative? Chu Qingyan finally realized what it meant by a loose tongue. Thus, she obediently picked up the notebook and read it without missing a single word. In the silent night, even the hall was quiet, except for the sound of pages being flipped from time to time. Xiao Su looked up and saw the little girl rubbing her eyes and taking notes seriously. A touch of gentleness flashed through his eyes. He couldn't bear for her to suffer, but some things had to be experienced, so he had to force himself to watch her grow. Chu Qingyan did not notice how gentle his gaze was on her, as she was completely focused on the book. Inside the hall, Turin and Hualing were reorganizing the information. Ethereal saw that he couldn't help much, so he turned around to leave. But when he turned around, he saw his junior sister standing to the side. He was a bit surprised and wanted to go up to her, but she turned around and left the hall. "Xiao Yan, didn't I tell you to go back to your room? Why did you come out?" Ethereal walked past her and stopped in front of her. Cheng Yanluo stopped in her tracks. She didn't want to pay attention to him, but in the end, she still raised her head and indifferently replied, "I was worried about Qing Yan, so I followed her to take a look." Ethereal was stunned by the distant look in her eyes and forgot what he wanted to say. His head was a bit dizzy right now, so he stood there in a daze. She didn't hear any response from him, so Cheng Yanluo ignored him. She turned around and planned to walk past him, but she suddenly saw his body sway and she subconsciously supported him. "What's wrong with you?" Before she could finish speaking, she could feel a burning sensation under her fingers through his clothes. She was slightly startled. "Are you having a fever?" After Ethereal steadied himself, his eyes regained some clarity. He smiled. "It's nothing. I might have caught a cold." You should go back and rest. It's getting late. With that, he planned to turn around and return to his room, but suddenly, another wave of dizziness hit him, forcing him to support himself against the wall. Cheng Yenluo looked at him and frowned hesitantly. He had always been in good health, so the sudden fever probably had something to do with last night. She had almost stripped him naked, but he had given her his outerwear to take care of her. Perhaps he had caught a cold then, and with the torment of the past 2 nights, even if his body was made of iron, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Ethereal originally wanted to wait for the dizziness to subside before returning to his room, but he realized that the situation was far worse than he had imagined. At this moment, he suddenly felt a tug on his arm and someone wrapped their arms around his waist. He lowered his head and looked at the slender hand supporting him. He turned to look at the person beside him in disbelief. Xiaoyan, I'll help you back to your room. You might get worse after a while. Cheng Yenluo lowered her eyes. Her tone was calm, devoid of any emotion. However, this was already a very good improvement for Ethereal. He wanted to speak again, but she cut him off. Don't talk nonsense. I'm just trying to be a doctor. I can't leave you in the lurch. She seemed to be trying to convince herself. After that, she stopped talking and helped him back to his room. Ethereal only smiled at her. Actually, he was already very satisfied to receive Xiaoyan's concern. It was better than not contacting her for the rest of his life. She supported him. From behind, it looked as if they were walking in each other's arms. Mr. Chu closed the window and smiled mischievously at Mr. Chu, who was half sitting on the couch. Dan Yang, the relationship between Kong Kongzi and little Yama seems to have improved. Why are you so worried? Don't cause trouble for them. Mrs. Chu's voice was still a little hoarse from the cold. She coughed lightly after a few words. Mr. Chu hurriedly poured her a cup of honey water and patted her back. He coaxed her. Dan Yang, don't cough. Drink some water and you'll be fine. Good girl. Mrs. Chu shook her head with a smile. She drank the water from his hand and said, I'm not a child. You don't have to coax me like this. Mr. Chu shook his head. That girl, Kai Kai, is already pregnant, and I only have you. If I don't treat you well, who else can I treat well? Mrs. Chu had heard her husband's childish words of love so many times, but she felt sweet every time. Do you think highly of Her Highness and our daughter? My son-in-law is very good. He knows everything. Is there something you're worried about? Mr. Chu was puzzled. Mrs. Chu sighed. His Highness's status and ours are different. Plus, he's older than Kai Kai. I feel that, Mr. Chu chuckled. Dan Yang, your thinking is too old-fashioned. As long as you like each other, age doesn't matter. Status doesn't matter. Mrs. Chu couldn't help but laugh. Where did you hear that? But it does make sense. Mr. Chu raised his head proudly. I'm so smart. Of course, I'm self-taught. They laughed and chatted happily. The topic was over just like that. If it was true love, why would he care so much? Don't you think so? Chapter 349. In the Imperial study, a battle of words was taking place. No, it was a one-man show. Junzi Mei looked at her brother in front of her, unable to understand. She wanted to smash everything in the hall. Brother, why won't you let me see Xiao Su? Do you know how much I care about him? Jun Mei asked angrily. Jun Mei Shing held his forehead with one hand. He hadn't slept well for 2 nights in a row. The culprit was right in front of him. Zimei, you're the princess of a country. You should act like one. What's wrong with you? Besides, you're a girl and unmarried. Don't you feel ashamed that you keep mentioning a stranger's name? Jun Mei Shing's good temper was exhausted. He spoke coldly. Jun Mei relied on her brother's love for her and didn't notice the disappointment in his words. She sat on the chair and said confidently, brother, ever since I met him 2 years ago, I've treated him as someone I'll marry for the rest of my life. Sooner or later, I'll take him down, so this isn't important anymore. Zimei. Junmei Xing put down his hand and called out to her seriously. Junmei, who was about to ramble on, was frightened by his serious look. She bit her lip and didn't say anything else. You're the princess of Junlan. Your status is incomparably noble. If you want anything, just say the word and someone will give it to you. This is understandable. But who is Xiao Su? He's the king of England of Sichuan. If you make things difficult for the lord of a country, this isn't a simple game. I can turn a blind eye to whatever you do in Junlan, but I won't allow it. Junmei Xing lectured her with a stern face for the first time. But Junmei was obviously unconvinced. Brother, you told me not to make things difficult for him. Then what are you doing now? Aren't you detaining him too? Don't think that you can deceive me just because you've done it secretly. She felt that she and her brother were the same. There was nothing to say. Hearing Junzi Mei's words, Junzi Xing laughed in anger. He also felt that his sister was hopeless. Sister, don't you know what state our country is in now? It can be said that we are besieged on all sides, with jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards eyeing us covetously. And we have racked our brains to keep Xiao Su here because we want to rely on his ability to get through this difficult time. But you have ruined it again and again. Do you really care about Junlan's safety? Junmei couldn't say a word. She felt that her brother was really angry. This was different from when she made him unhappy in the past. Junmei stammered. She was clearly frightened. A storm is brewing, yet you only care about your personal affairs. If this matter were to spread out, those people with bad intentions would use this matter to make an issue out of it. At that time, there would be many people who would mock our royal family. Now that things have come to this, Zimei, your royal brother is too disappointed in you. Jun Zishan closed his eyes, feeling somewhat pained. Brother, don't be angry. I was wrong. Junmei finally panicked. She could enjoy such treatment at this time, and no one dared to bully her, because of her brother's love for her. Now that her brother was disappointed in her, how could she survive in Junlan in the future? Men, lock the princess in the princess's residence. Without my order, she is not allowed to leave the residence. Brother, flog all the people in the princess's residence and send them to the border. The princess's current situation is related to these servants. Brother, I was wrong, send the imperial guards to guard the princess's residence. No one is allowed to enter or leave at will. Brother, after Junmei gave the order, Junmei was taken away with a wave of his hand. Being locked in the princess's residence and being grounded were two completely different things. Junmei looked at the palace with some despair. Did her brother really not want her anymore? Lao Bai reported that the princess had been sent back to the princess's residence, and even the people she had planted in the palace had been removed one by one. Only then did Junzi Xing rub her brows. Zimei is used to being unreasonable. It's also my fault for being busy with state affairs and neglecting to discipline her. Choose 2 experienced nannies to teach her the rules of conduct and let her cultivate her character. Don't think about such nonsense. Lao Bai was very surprised by what His Majesty had done to the princess today. Usually, when the princess made mistakes, His Majesty would only punish her lightly. He had never been so strict as today. It was probably because the princess had reached into the harem. The spies she had planted were usually of high status in the palace. They had crossed His Majesty's bottom line, which was why he was so angry this time. Moreover, the princess had deluded herself into thinking of kidnapping the savior of Junlan. She was simply courting death. Fortunately, His Majesty pitied her as the only blood relative left in this world. Otherwise, the princess would have suffered more than just a little punishment. Your Majesty, you must also take care of your health. Junlan can't do without you. Lao Bai couldn't help but worry when she saw the dark circles under His Majesty's eyes. Junmei Xing smiled bitterly and shook his head. He didn't reply. At this critical moment of life and death, and with the matter of his imperial sister, he already felt physically and mentally exhausted. At this time, the sky was gradually brightening. Let's go to morning court. Jun Mei-shing stood up, smoothed the creases on his clothes, and strode out. Lao Bai followed behind. His Majesty was only in his early 20s, but there was already white hair in his hair. Her eyes felt sour. Everyone thought that the position was glorious and respected by tens of thousands of people. Little did they know that in order to sit firmly in that position, in addition to having a strong hand, one also had to have a strong ability to resist pressure. It was lonely at the top. In the side hall. Xiao Su closed the last bit of information and turned his head to look out the window. The sky was already bright. Huling and Turan had already gone to do something. On the side, the little fellow hugged more than a dozen account books and was sleeping soundly. Xiao Su couldn't help but smile when he saw this. He reached out and took the book away from her, but she didn't wake up. It could be seen that she was really tired after staying up all night. He stood up and reached through her arms and calves. He picked her up by the waist and turned to his room. Covering her body with the quilt, Xiao Su stroked her head. Then, he didn't stay any longer. He turned around and returned to the side hall. Master. Huling and Turan immediately came back after dealing with the matter of the fierce cavalry. Go and tell Jun Mei-shing that this king has a way to deal with the vassal king. Xiao Su said lightly. His voice was clear and mellow, without any trace of staying up all night. Yes. Huling immediately went down. Last night, he had already memorized all the information about Junlan in his mind. After spending the night, he also found the flaws of these people. He had a bold plan in his heart. Jun Mei-shing had just finished court when he heard the news. He couldn't believe it. In just one night, he had a way. If he didn't hear wrong, then this person was terrifyingly powerful. But he didn't dare to delay for a moment. He immediately took Lao Bai to the side hall. Chapter 350. When Jun Zixing arrived at the side hall, Xiao Su and the others were already sitting and waiting for him. As soon as he saw Xiao Su, Jun Zixing ignored everyone's salutations and immediately greeted him. King of England, I heard that you found a way. Xiao Su wasn't as excited as Jun Zixing. He calmly reached out to Jun Zixing and said, Your Majesty, please sit down. This king still has some things to confirm with Your Majesty. Seeing Xiao Su's calm expression, Jun Zixing knew that he had lost his composure. He sat down and tried to restrain the excitement in his heart. He returned to his usual steady and calm appearance and asked politely, King of England, if there's something you don't understand, you can ask me at any time. I'll tell you everything I know. Xiao Su nodded. Your Majesty, I have a few things to ask of you. Go ahead. Affected by Xiao Su's expression, Jun Zixing said calmly. The first thing is the results of the investigation into the assassination of your imperial father. Xiao Su knew that this wasn't in the information, but he still had to study it with Jun Zixing. Jun Zixing was stunned at first because he didn't expect him to ask this. However, he immediately recalled the investigation at that time and said slowly, after imperial father was poisoned, the matter was handed over to the Supreme Court. In the end, it was found that it was done by concubine Leng and concubine Liang's family. They were quickly arrested and brought to justice. They confessed to this matter. Jun Zixing felt that this matter was already over. He didn't know why Xiao Su would mention it again. Xiao Su heard this and said, Your Majesty, do you also think that this matter was really done by concubine Leng? King of England, what do you mean? Jun Zixing didn't understand. This king found out that concubine Liang was timid by nature. She was framed and entered the cold palace. Her family only made their fortune from tea. After concubine Liang entered the palace, her family didn't have any brothers, nor did they have any connections. I don't know how her family got the secret poison of the imperial family. Also, where did they find such an elite assassin? Where did the silver come from? Xiao Su asked 3 questions in a row, leaving Gentleman Xing speechless. When his father was poisoned, he was out training. By the time he returned, the matter had already been dealt with, so he didn't think too much about it. Now that Xiao Su asked this question, he also had many questions. As the ruler of a country, he had to take one step at a time. As long as someone gave him a hint, he would be able to see more deeply than others. For example, right now. King of England, what do you think? Gentleman Sheng looked at the person in front of him and asked sincerely. Xiao Su curled his lips when he heard this, but there was no trace of a smile on his face. I heard that the eldest son of the Supreme Court Chancellor married King Ping's 3rd concubine's daughter. 5th uncle. Impossible. Junzi Xing blurted out subconsciously, 5th imperial uncle is a refined and gentle person. How could he do such a thing? In response to Gentleman Sheng's disbelief, Xiao Su smiled indifferently. I'm just reminding you. But if he's really refined and gentle, then what about the 120,000 soldiers in his hands? Don't tell me it's for playing house. Gentleman Xing fell silent. Xiao Su was right. Although 5th imperial uncle was really good to him when he was young, in the current situation, he couldn't see through 5th imperial uncle. However, he still had some doubts. The vassal king was waiting for an opportunity to act. It was 5th imperial uncle who sent a secret letter to me first. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about the vassal king's movements so quickly. He's just a thief pretending to be a thief. Seeing that Gentleman Sheng was still doubtful, Xiao Su didn't force him. He said casually, if you don't believe me, you can invite the Supreme Court Chancellor's family back to interrogate them. However, it has to be done in secret. You can also reopen the case from that year and re-examine it. In the imperial family, there was no blood to speak of. Conspiracies and deceit filled their lives. Xiao Su closed his eyes, as if recalling his hopeless 20 years in the past. Gentleman Xing reluctantly nodded. Okay, when I go back, I'll send someone to investigate. I still don't believe that 5th imperial uncle would do such a thing. Xiao Su ignored this question. Second question, Your Majesty, do you think that the strange deaths of your brothers and sisters in the past 6 months are strange? Xiao Su asked faintly. Gentleman Sheng was very surprised. Xiao Su didn't think that his brothers and sisters were killed because he couldn't tolerate them like other people. After all, this was how rumors spread outside. King of England, you don't doubt me? Xiao Su looked at Gentleman Zisheng as if he was an idiot. I don't think that the person who built the mansions of my brothers and sisters would kill them. After all, a lot of manpower and material resources were spent on those mansions. If people died just like that, the losses would outweigh the gains. Because Junlan valued etiquette, those mansions were built according to the specifications of the princes and princesses. If the princes and princesses weren't there, they couldn't be awarded to the ministers. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in line with etiquette. Gentleman Sheng was a little moved. Even an outsider like you believes me. But my people and relatives don't believe me. They all say that I'm cruel and merciless, killing my brothers and sisters. How could the people know so much? It's just that someone is adding fuel to the fire and spreading rumors. Xiao Su said leisurely. It was obvious that it couldn't be Gentleman Sheng. An emperor who hadn't established himself yet, how big of a hole was there in his brain to kill his brothers and sisters? Moreover, he didn't even spare the princesses. Then King of England, do you know who's behind this? Gentleman Sheng was a little agitated again. Xiao Su looked at him coldly. The rumors are still going on. Get someone to capture a few people who are making a big fuss and interrogate them. Then you'll know. Xiao Su felt that this person was extremely lucky to be able to be the emperor, and had been for a few months at that. At this time, he was still intact. Gentleman Xing seemed to have been enlightened and immediately nodded. Yes, you're right. I'll give the order later. He had been so busy recently that he didn't have time to care about these things. Unfortunately, the rumors didn't get a good channel. Coupled with the deliberate guidance of someone with ulterior motives, it would soon ferment even more. At this time, Gentleman Shing didn't quite understand. King of England, you said that the person behind this killed my brothers and sisters. The reason is obvious. It's to make people misunderstand that I'm afraid that my brothers and sisters will fight for the throne and get rid of them quickly. The princesses are all women and don't have the qualifications to fight for the throne. Why would the person behind this be so ruthless? Could it be that they want to create an image of me as selfish and self-centered? Xiao Su snorted coldly. Of course the princesses won't fight for the throne. It's just that they're more valuable. Gentleman Shing was very confused, but he didn't dare interrupt Xiao Su. He listened to him continue. Generally, when a new emperor ascends the throne and his foundation is unstable and the country is in chaos, he will use the form of political marriages with other countries. This is used to check the power of some people. Gentleman Shing understood immediately. So the person behind this wants to cut off my escape route and doesn't give me any chance to make a comeback. Xiao Su didn't answer. He rubbed his forehead. Although this Gentleman Shing wasn't stupid, he was still very stupid without someone to enlighten him. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted his next plan to be smoother, he wouldn't have been willing to talk so much with Gentleman Shing. Chapter 351. Just talking about these two issues made Junzi Shing explode with anger. But thanks to Xiao Su's analysis, he was able to sort out the problems that had been troubling him for the past few days. At the very least, he was no longer like a headless ball of string, unable to grasp the slightest clue. While drinking tea, Junzi Shing could no longer hold back his temper. He repeatedly ordered Lao Bai to investigate the poisoning of the late emperor, the mysterious deaths of his royal siblings, and the mastermind behind the spreading of the rumors. Xiao Su was not in a hurry. After he finished giving his orders, he slowly spoke again. There is one more thing. It's about the concubines in the imperial harem. Junzi Shing immediately sat upright. King of England, there is no need to worry about Zhen. There is no harm in speaking. Xiao Su did not intend to be courteous with him. He leisurely leaned back in his chair and said with a languid expression, I heard that Consort Xiao Shufei was not born as a harem and did not go through the selection process. Is this true? Consort Xiao Shufei was Jing Wang's Mufei and the child of Junzi Shing's grandfather. Zhen is not very clear on this matter. Junzi Shing shook his head. But he turned to Lao Bai and said, you should be clear on this matter. Come and talk to the King of England. Lao Bai had been by Junzi Shing's side this entire time. Just now, Xiao Su's words had dispelled the heavy dark clouds that had shrouded the capital. He had already felt admiration for Xiao Su. When the matter of Consort Xiao Shufei was mentioned, he had wanted to explain. Now that His Highness asked, he did not hide anything and immediately replied. Consort Xiao Shufei was indeed not selected through the proper selection process. Because in Junlan, if a woman is of marriageable age or above and is unmarried, she can send a legitimate daughter to the palace to participate in the selection process. Back then, although Consort Xiao Shufei was of marriageable age, she had a childhood playmate who was engaged at a very early age. Thus, she did not participate in the selection process. At this point, Lao Bai couldn't help but pause, as though he was thinking about how to continue. Junzi Shing was listening attentively. Seeing him suddenly stop, he was a little puzzled. Lao Bai, hurry up and tell me. Don't dilly-dally. Why did Xiao Shufei appear in the inner palace after missing the selection? He didn't think that Xiao Su would casually ask such a question. He would only mention it if it was useful, so he was a little dissatisfied with Lao Bai's hesitation. Xiao Su chuckled softly. It must have been a coincidence that Emperor Mingxian saw Consort Xiao Shu and took her into his harem. Emperor Mingxian was the title of Grandpa Sheng. Lao Bai did not expect Xiao Su to know. He smiled awkwardly and said to His Majesty, the King of England is not wrong. That year, after the selection of talented women, it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. His Majesty Mingxian brought his ministers to tour the lake and happened to see Xiao Shufei, who was out sightseeing. Admiring her beauty and talent, he ordered people to inquire about her. Because he was the ruler of a country, Xiao Shufei's parents did not dare to disobey and sent their daughter to the palace. What? Imperial grandfather didn't know that Xiao Shufei was engaged. Grandpa Sheng was very surprised. Lao Bai smiled bitterly. Your Majesty, at that time, Your Majesty Ming Xian had taken a fancy to her. How could this subject dare to disobey? I only heard that Xiao Shufei cried for several days when she heard that the marriage was bestowed, and that so-called fiancé's family left the capital. Perhaps he was afraid of getting into trouble. If the ruler wanted a subject to die, the subject had to die. This was the principle. How could a subject dare to oppose the emperor? Grandpa Sheng knew that his imperial grandfather was dissolute by nature, but he didn't know that there was a matter of snatching someone's fiancé. But he didn't understand. King of England, what does this have to do with our grand plan? Xiao Su listened to the conversation between the ruler and his minister. At this moment, his expression was somewhat mocking. Your Majesty, don't be anxious. This matter is very important, so important that it can help you get rid of someone. Grandpa Sheng was delighted. Then King of England, quickly tell me. Xiao Su turned to look at Lao Bai. He remembered that this person had once served the previous emperor. I wonder if Lord Lao has checked the records of Emperor Mingshuan's bedside when he was on the throne. No, Lao Bai answered truthfully. Then do you know the specific date of Prince Jing's birth? Xiao Su asked again. I do. Lao Bai answered. Although he was a servant by the previous emperor's side at that time, as a confidant of his master, he had to understand all the situations of his master's competitors. So he not only knew about Prince Jing, but also the specific birth dates of Prince Jin, Prince Zhe, and Prince Ping. Good, then go to the table and take out the third bedside record from the right. Find the dates of Consort Zhao's bedside before she was pregnant, Xiao Su ordered. Although Xiao Su wasn't his master, when he spoke, he couldn't help but follow his orders. Lao Bai was shocked. This person had a powerful aura that was even stronger than his imperial majesty's. Lao Bai picked up the bedside record and found the one before she was pregnant. But when he flipped through it, he found that the most recent page was missing. He opened the page and found that there were traces of tearing. He was a little confused and brought it to his imperial majesty. Your Majesty, that page is missing. Gentleman Sheng frowned. How could it be missing? After he said that, he remembered Xiao Su's question. Xiao Su wouldn't have brought up the matter of concubines for no reason. He looked at Xiao Su in shock. Are you suspecting that second uncle isn't my grandfather's son? When he said that, Lao Bai and the others' faces changed. Xiao Su coldly said, I didn't say that. Gentleman Sheng immediately turned to ask Lao Bai, when was second uncle born? Lao Bai immediately replied, the 12th of December. The missing bedside record was March. It was September, and he heard that Prince Jing was born prematurely. Huo Ling, who was in charge of investigating this, said, March's record was lost. I found out that Emperor Ming Xian signed an agreement in March because his territory was taken over by a neighboring country. He was in a bad mood, so he got drunk for 3 or 4 nights. One night, he stayed in Consort Zhao's palace, but whether or not he bedded her was recorded. But coincidentally, I found the midwife of Prince Jing. According to her, Prince Jing wasn't born prematurely. He was born after 10 months of pregnancy. Huo Ling looked at them and continued, and in February, Consort Xiao asked Emperor Ming Xian for permission to return home to visit her family. At that time, her childhood sweetheart, Sir Lin, also returned to the capital. When he said that, it was undoubtedly a thunderbolt. If Prince Jing was born at full term, but Consort Xiao wasn't in the palace in February, and Consort Xiao claimed that the child was prematurely born, then the record of March's bedside record disappeared. Gentleman Sheng gripped the armrest. He didn't think that such a dirty thing would happen in the imperial family. Imperial concubines and the harem, and it was only discovered after 2 generations. And that fake prince was now a vassal king. He had the power to threaten the imperial family. Although Consort Xiao is dead, that Sir Lin is still alive, Xiao Su suddenly said. Lao Bai, go capture that Sir Lin for me. Gentleman Sheng was furious. Yes. Lao Bai complied, and when he raised his head, he looked at Xiao Su, who had a calm expression on his face. This person was too frightening. He could uncover such a secret just by relying on a lost bedtime record. He couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 352. If that was true, then second uncle's identity as King Jing would be exposed. He would be removed from the royal family. He would be able to take back his troops, and a big threat would be eliminated. It was as easy as blowing off dust. After the order was given, Jun Zixing looked back at Xiao Su, who was sitting in the chair. Although he knew the man in front of him was wearing a human skin mask and had a very ordinary face, every time he saw him, regardless of whether he was wearing a mask or a disguise, Jun Zixing could not help but want to submit to him. He was shocked by his own thoughts. He immediately discarded the thoughts in his mind and turned to look at Xiao Su with a serious expression, telling him what he thought in his heart. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Su gave him a look of disdain. Embarrassed, he couldn't help but ask, then what good idea does Princing have? Xiao Su thought it was a miracle that a person like that could stay on the throne for so long. If I were you, I would first collect evidence. With both the witnesses and the evidence, there's no need to fear him escaping. However, I advise your majesty not to act rashly and alert the enemy. Let's wait and see. If you're bitten in the back, the losses will outweigh the gains. Xiao Su also didn't want to be long-winded with him. This person was really too ignorant. Jun Shaoxing realized he had been too reckless. If he had failed to capture Second Uncle would have said he had wronged him and made up a false accusation against him. That would have put him in an even worse position. He would have given Second Uncle an excuse to do so. Jun Zixing broke out in a cold sweat. He thought he was being too naive. He took a deep look at Xiao Su. Sure enough, this person had a deep understanding of human nature. His ability to devise strategies and play willful tricks was simply not something he could compare with. Okay, he immediately said. I will listen to King of England. After that, Xiao Su gave Jun Zixing a few more pointers. They were all small things that would not attract attention, but Xiao Su was able to find a flaw. After a whole morning, Jun Zixing felt like he had been reborn. He felt like he had been brainwashed. This conversation simply overturned his previous understanding of the politics of the throne. He looked at the person in front of him, who still had an indifferent expression, and couldn't be more surprised. When they fought on the battlefield, he knew that Xiao Su was a rare talent, but he didn't expect that his real talent was not only on the battlefield, but also in politics. It was simply impossible for him to reach Xiao Su's level. What should I do now? He did not forget Xiao Su said he wanted to talk to him about a big plan. Xiao Su squinted his eyes. The plan is starting to take shape, but we still need you to verify the facts before we can proceed. Jun Zixing thought what he said made sense, so he stood up and left to investigate the matter. Your Majesty, although you have not been in charge of Junlan for long, this prince feels that with the ability of your subordinates, 2 days should be enough to find out the truth. Xiao Su also stood up, but his expression was firm. It was as if he felt that he had given too much in the past 2 days. Jun Zixing gritted his teeth. This person was too harsh. Finding out so many things in 2 days was an impossible task. But looking at his firm expression, he did not want to lose face in front of him. He could only bite the bullet and agree. After Jun Zixing left, Xiao Su slowly sat down. His calm face showed a little tiredness. He put his thumb and index finger on his forehead and closed his eyes slightly, as if he was going to rest. Suddenly, a pair of soft and boneless hands were placed on his shoulders. He froze at first, but after feeling the familiar strength, he relaxed and enjoyed the massage. Turin and Huling had already left to do their work. Because of Xiao Su's request, Jun Zixing did not send any palace servants to serve in the inner hall. They were all standing guard outside the hall. Their main task was to pass on messages or carry things. Big Ice Cube, you already have a plan. Why don't you tell Jun Zixing? Chu Qingyan did not feel that there was anything wrong with calling the emperor by his name in the palace. Just now, when he was talking with Jun Zixing, she had been standing at the side door and had not entered. She had heard part of the conversation, but she was curious. Why did the Big Ice Cube tell Jun Zixing so much and have him verify it himself? She remembered that the Big Ice Cube had already collected the evidence, but he had not shown it to Jun Zixing. She was strong, but the strength was moderate. Moreover, he had taught her to recognize all the acupuncture points. With her innate intelligence, she quickly understood how to make a person's meridians flow more smoothly. Xiao Su relaxed his tense brows and said casually, "This prince spent so much effort to collect the evidence. Why should I give it to him? Also, it's better to verify it yourself. That way, it will be more convincing." Chu Qingyan nodded. They had stayed up late last night and worked overtime to sort out the useful information from the mountain of information. They could not let him get away with it for free. But Big Ice Cube, it doesn't seem like your style to teach him so patiently. Chu Qingyan was curious. This prince's style? What is this prince's style? Xiao Su opened his eyes slightly. Although his tone was still indifferent, there was a hint of thought-provoking meaning in it. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue behind him. Oh no, she had accidentally said what she was thinking. But what was said was like spilled water. She could not take it back. She could only bite the bullet and reply, "Towards unimportant people, you can ignore them." She felt that her words were asking for a beating. But she felt the body under her hand tremble slightly, as if he was laughing. She was slightly embarrassed. Although Jun Zixing is a little stupid, he's not hopeless. If he's properly trained, he can still become a useful king. However, the main thing is that I don't want to be pestered by him in the coming days. If I can solve it myself, I won't need to rely on others in the future. Xiao Su withdrew the smile on his face and said indifferently. I understand. Chu Qingyan poked her head out from behind him. It's better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Not bad, this phrase is used well. Xiao Su reached out and patted her head. But Jun Zixing shouldn't be as bad as you say. It's just that in front of you, he seems too small. Chu Qingyan added this in her heart. Then she continued, but you gave him 2 days. Is that enough? We had 1 night last night, and he had 2 days. It's enough. Xiao Su disagreed. Chu Qingyan nodded in agreement. Her Big Ice Cube's requirements were higher than others. As the saying went, a strict teacher produces a fine student. Hopefully, this Jun Zixing would not disappoint. Chapter 353. Knowing that he hadn't had a good rest for the past few nights, Chu Qingyan didn't stop massaging him to soothe him. In fact, she still had some questions in her heart, but she felt that she shouldn't disturb his rest, so she shut her mouth. But before she could speak, Big Ice Block spoke instead. What do you want to ask? Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. She really suspected that he had eyes on the back of his head. But since Big Ice Block had spoken, she didn't stand on ceremony and asked directly. Big Ice Block, if Gentleman Xing investigates those things in 2 days, how long will we have to stay in Junlan? It had already taken more than half a month to get here from Sichuan. In a few days, it would be a month. She couldn't feel at ease. Time passed day by day, as if it was cutting her flesh. But she always felt that Big Ice Block didn't take this matter to heart at all. She felt that it was as if the eunuch was more anxious than the emperor. Xiao Su knew what she was worried about. He reached out and patted the little hand on her shoulder. His voice was a little soft. Don't worry, it won't be long. Chu Qingyan sighed softly in her heart. How could such a big mess be solved in just a few days? But since Big Ice Block had spoken, she knew that he wasn't a person who spoke empty words, so she put down her worries for the time being. Chu Qingyan turned to him and asked, after we finish lunch later, can you go to sleep first? She knew that his body had reached its limit. If it hadn't been poisoned, she wouldn't have been too worried about Big Ice Block's body, but it was a critical period recently, and nothing could be done carelessly. Moreover, she had been standing at the side door for so long, but he hadn't noticed her presence. It was enough to see that he was too tired. Her tone was like an adult coaxing a child. Xiao Su smiled. When did his little fellow grow up and do adult things? However, the hope in her eyes made him unable to reject her. Chu Qingyan smiled and immediately asked Xining to bring in the food. Just now, she had already asked Xining to prepare. Big Ice Block didn't like to let the palace servants serve him in the hall, so she sent them all to the kitchen. There was strength in numbers, and the food was quickly prepared. Chu Qingyan attentively put food in his bowl. Looking at the mountain of food in his bowl, she was very satisfied. Big Ice Block used to live in the barracks and had eaten all kinds of food, whether it was wild vegetables, tree bark, or snowy water. He had shared the joys and hardships with the soldiers. This was what she had heard from Turin later. At that time, she was forced to eat carrots by Big Ice Cube. In order to resist, she also gave him carrots, green peppers, chili, and other things that she didn't like to eat. She wanted to see him embarrass himself because he didn't eat them, but she didn't expect that he didn't refuse. He even said that she would eat as much as he wanted. After learning about Big Ice Block's past, she felt a bit more admiration for him and a bit more pity. When she happily put food in his bowl, Wu Ling's jaw almost fell off and Mu Ling's eyes almost went blind. Because their master was obsessed with cleanliness, a very strong obsession with cleanliness. It was fine in the barracks, but when the conditions allowed it, his food was very expensive, not to mention other people using used chopsticks to put food in his bowl. But Chu Qingyan had done it and she was sitting there perfectly fine after doing it. Chu Qingyan's strength, or rather her position in their master's heart, was enough to make them look at her in a new light. Moreover, their master seemed to be enjoying it very much. He would occasionally put food in his bowl for the little princess, but of course, it was food that the little princess didn't like to eat. Anyway, on the way here, their knowledge was shattered again and again, and then it was reformed again and again. After eating, Chu Qingyan felt that she had to go out for a walk to help with digestion. There was nothing else to do, so Xiao Su allowed her to make the decision. Walking in the sunny courtyard, after eating and drinking to their heart's content, they felt warm all over. The sun was a bit glaring, but it wasn't very hot, it could only be considered warm. After walking a few steps, Chu Qingyan leaned against a large tree. Xiao Su was standing at her side and seeing that her cloak was crooked, he straightened it out. At this time, Chu Qingyan seemed to hear the sound of a sword cutting through the air and turned to look at the source of the sound. She saw Jin Xian bathed in the sun as he waved the long sword in his hand. Every move was very serious. It was clearly the middle of winter, but his forehead was covered in fine beads of sweat. It could be seen that he had practiced for a while. Xiao Su followed her gaze and softly said, "I have to admit, you've taken in a pretty good subordinate." It was rare to hear the Big Ice Cube praise her, so Chu Qingyan had a smug look on her face. "That's because I'm a talent scout who can find a fine horse." Xiao Su smiled without saying a word. Chu Qingyan felt that the Big Ice Cube was laughing at her, but she didn't mind. Instead, she turned to look at him with a serious expression. "Big Ice Cube, thank you. Jin Xian said that you gave him a sword manual. I saw that he seemed to like it very much." Xiao Su patted her head. "That sword manual is just a piece of waste paper to this king. If he thinks it's good, then it's good." He was the one who had taken the initiative to give it to Jin Xian to practice, but now he was acting so aloof. She couldn't help laughing in her heart. She felt that this Big Ice Cube who said one thing and meant another was really cute. "Big Ice Cube, did you give the sword manual to Jin Xian because you think he's a good seedling?" Chu Qingyan tilted her head to look at him with a bright smile. It depends on the person. Xiao Su gave an ambiguous answer. Chu Qingyan thought that she had guessed correctly. The big ice cube had recognized Jin Xian's strength. But in Xiao Su's eyes, only the people around her were worthy of his attention. If it was anyone else, no matter how smart or strong they were, he would not put them in his eyes. This was Xiao Su, protecting his own. If he wanted to protect a person, the flowers and plants around her would also receive a bit of grace. After standing in the sun for a while, Chu Qingyan felt that her clothes were a bit hot. She looked up at the person facing her. He didn't have any outstanding facial features, but he always gave off a kind of mesmerizing charm. She tilted her head and thought, could this be the manliness that her roommates always talked about? She couldn't help but laugh when she thought about it. Her laughter clearly alarmed Xiao Su, who was in deep thought. He raised his brows as he looked at her. It seemed like a person who could amuse themselves. Chu Qingyan stopped laughing and looked at the time. She then looked at the big ice cube's red eyes and immediately made a decision. Big ice cube, let's go back to sleep. I'll tell you a story. Xiao Su nodded without even thinking. When the palace servants who were sweeping the leaves in the yard heard their conversation, they froze in place. Sleep together. This is too bold and unrestrained. This was the imperial palace. Also, that little girl was too young. God, he felt like he didn't understand this world anymore. Chapter 354. Of course, Chu Qingyan doesn't know that her unintentional words have set off a small whirlwind. There are rumors in the palace that the new emperor's guest has a hobby. That is, a pedophile. But because that side hall is tightly guarded, no one dares to investigate. Moreover, the palace servant who spread the rumor quickly disappeared from the palace. All the palace servants immediately shut up, and no one mentions this matter again. Chu Qingyan naturally doesn't know what happened afterwards. At this time, she is holding the 36 stratagems that Xiao Su gave her before, flipping through the pages one by one. After seeing the contents of one of the pages, her eyes are filled with joy. Big ice cube, today I'll tell you a secret plot. Xiao Su expresses that he has no objection. In fact, he is not a child. He doesn't need someone to accompany him, and he doesn't need a bedtime story. However, he doesn't dislike the little fellow taking the initiative to tell him a story. Moreover, he likes the little fellow's voice. It's very clean, unlike the voices he heard in the past. It's almost hard to understand, and he needs to analyze it one by one. Later on, after getting used to it, he can also listen to the speaker's thoughts. If you lose something, you gain something. It's just that this is too tiring. He doesn't want to live like that anymore. The little fellow's voice is already cheerful. He closes his eyes and smiles slightly. In fact, in the little fellow's world, there seems to be nothing to be sad about. When she learns to sing sad songs on the road, she can turn them into her own joyful tune. Aside from being frightened along the way with him, she has always been very strong. This kind of little fellow is also what he wanted to cultivate in the beginning. Contentment brings joy, it's enough. When Chu Qingyan happily finishes telling a story and is about to turn to the next page, she finds that the big ice cube has already fallen asleep. She breathes a sigh of relief, puts the book to the side, and then props up her chin to size him up. The faint green color under his eyes makes her feel a little distressed. Even an omnipotent person can get hurt, and can get sick. She reaches out to pull up the quilt to cover his hands, and then tiptoes to the door. Looking back, she sees that he is still sleeping, and then goes out to close the door. This kind of good weather is suitable for sleeping, and also suitable for strolling. For the past 2 days, she hadn't gone to see her mother properly. Turning around, she walked towards her parents' room. Chu Qingyan knocks on the door and gets a response from inside. She pushes the door open and goes in. At a glance, she saw her mother lying on the bed. Chu Qingyan immediately walked over and took her mother's hand. She asked with concern, "Mother, are you well?" "Much better." Mrs. Chu smiled and patted her hand. "You were still coughing a few days ago, but you're not coughing anymore today. Kongling's medicine is really effective." Mrs. Chu frowned and said, "Why are your hands so cold? Come and warm them up." Chu Qingyan hurriedly shook her head. "No, no, no. I still don't want to pass the cold to you. What if you're about to recover and I make it worse?" However, when she saw that her mother's complexion was much rosier than a few days ago, she felt relieved. When Mr. Chu came back, he was very happy to see his daughter. Kai, look at what father has in his hands." Chu Qingyan curiously looked over. Mr. Chu opened his hands and saw a few colorful stones lying in his palms. Chu Qingyan's eyes twitched. "Father, it's so cold. You're going to pick up stones? Aren't you afraid that your fingers will freeze?" Mr. Chu shook his head. "Your bodies are too precious. I'm a man and I'm not afraid." With that, Mr. Chu sneezed. Chu Qingyan and Mrs. Chu couldn't help but laugh. Mr. Chu touched his nose. This sneeze had exposed him too quickly. "By the way, Kai, where's His Highness?" Mrs. Chu asked. When Mr. Chu heard this, he immediately said, "Yes, where's the scallion? Where is he? I haven't played with him in a long time." Chu Qingyan took her father's hand, then turned to her mother and said, "His Highness hasn't rested much these days because of Junlan. He's already asleep. It's been hard on His Highness." Mrs. Chu nodded. She had more or less heard about what happened in Junlan and felt that the King of England must be under a lot of pressure. She turned to her husband and said, "Yuan, if there's nothing else, don't disturb His Highness. He's very busy." Mr. Chu puffed up his cheeks and could only compromise in the end. "When he's done, I'll ask him to weave a fishing net. I heard that there's a big river in Jiang with a lot of fish in it." Chu Qingyan smiled when she heard this. Her father still hadn't forgotten about the fishing net. It was hard to imagine the big ice cube weaving a net. It should be very fun. Ahem, how could she think like that? With the big ice cube's noble status, how could it be possible that he would weave a net for her father? But why did she subconsciously think that the big ice cube would still do that? She felt that she was really letting her imagination run wild. In order not to disturb her mother's rest, Chu Qingyan chatted a little more and left. Today's sun was really too bright and beautiful. It was much colder than the previous 2 days. When she reached the long corridor, she saw Yen Luo carrying a basin of water from afar. She hid behind a pillar and observed for a while. Then, she stroked her chin and wondered why Sister Yen Luo had entered Ethereal's room. There must be something going on. She smiled maliciously and immediately followed her. She was about to hide by the door and eavesdrop when she was unexpectedly startled by Mu Ling, who had walked up to her. "What are you doing here?" Chu Qingyan asked in a low voice. Mu Ling crossed her arms and retorted, "Shouldn't I be the one asking you that?" Chu Qingyan knew that she was in the wrong. She straightened her body and whispered, "I was curious, so I followed you." She pointed inside. Mu Ling smiled when she heard this. "Ethereal is sick. Miss Cheng is taking care of him." Chu Qingyan suddenly understood. No wonder Sister Yen Luo had brought a basin of hot water in. But isn't this called "a friend in need is a friend indeed"? Mu Ling stroked her chin. Chu Qingyan shook her finger. That's not necessarily true. Every time the two of them gave people the feeling that they were about to reconcile, they would immediately fall out with each other. Therefore, there were some things that couldn't be said too early. Mu Ling nodded in agreement. Many disasters. Then, Mu Ling left because she still had important matters to attend to. Chu Qingyan looked at Mu Ling's departing figure and suddenly felt a little lost. Turan was paying close attention to the movements of the 4 vassals. Huo Ling was collecting information on the officials of Junlan. Yen Luo was taking care of Ethereal. Her father was taking care of her mother. Jean Xian was practicing martial arts. Xining was preparing dinner. Mu Ling also had something to do. She was the only one who seemed to have nothing to do. Could it be that she was a rice worm who only knew how to eat her fill? Although this was her goal in the past, she had long since abandoned this idea. It seemed that her plan had to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. She couldn't let it go on like this. After Chu Qingyan thought it through, she was about to leave when she heard the door behind her open. Chapter 355. Chu Qingyan turned around and saw Yan Luo standing at the door with a basin of water in her hand. She saw a flash of uneasiness on Yan Luo's face. She chuckled and pretended not to know anything. She looked at Yan Luo curiously. "Sister Yan Luo, why are you here?" Yan Luo tightened her grip on the basin. She felt as though she had nowhere to hide. However, when she saw the teasing look in the girl's eyes, Yan Luo's worries dissipated. All that was left was helplessness and anger. Yan Luo was annoyed and amused at the same time. "Come on, you saw it from outside. Tell me, what do you want to know?" She turned around and closed the door. Then, she walked slowly to the side. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue and followed her to the kitchen. "Didn't you say that you would ignore him? Why are you in his room?" Chu Qingyan asked even though she already knew the answer. She knew that Yan Luo had a sharp tongue but a soft heart, but she just wanted to pry into her thoughts. Or rather, she wanted Yan Luo to see her true feelings. Yan Luo placed the basin on the stove and crossed her arms. "Can you say that I'm kind-hearted and can't bear to see him fall sick?" Chu Qingyan shrugged. "If you think that saying it will make you feel better, I'll force myself to listen." Yan Luo felt uneasy after being exposed. However, she quickly admitted, "He fell sick mostly because of me. I can't possibly leave him in the lurch and bite the hand that feeds me, right? I can't do such a thing." Chu Qingyan felt that Yan Luo's words were too exaggerated. Chu Qingyan didn't intend to beat around the bush. She got straight to the point and asked, "Then what do you think? Are you really not going to forgive him?" "I don't think so." "How many times have you asked me the same question? Don't you find it annoying?" Yan Luo glared at her fiercely. Chu Qingyan shook her head. "I've hit a sore spot. You're hopping mad." "Ha!" Before she could finish laughing, the person in front of her poked her forehead. Chu Qingyan covered her head and looked at her, but she heard her laugh with her hands on her waist. "This is called poking, okay?" Chu Qingyan felt that this was simply too depressing. This person was really good at changing the topic. However, just as she was about to start the second round of questioning, Yan Luo's smile slowly disappeared. Her entire being seemed to be shrouded in loneliness. Chu Qingyan was a little stunned. This was the first time she had seen Ming Yan's disappointed side. At this moment, she said, "Little girl, if an apology could be exchanged for forgiveness, then there wouldn't be so many grudges in this world. If you don't care too much about it, then perhaps you can really not care about other people's apologies and reply that it's fine. But if you can't say it's fine, it's probably because you can't accept it." Yan Luo leaned against the door and crossed her arms. She was no longer as carefree as before. Instead, she seemed to be really cold and couldn't help but hug herself tightly. Her expression was a little dreamy, as though she had sunk into the past. Chu Qingyan closed her mouth. Actually, she didn't know what had happened between the two of them. She had only seen how Ethereal had tried her best to save her and how she had resisted. In her opinion, when the two of them stood together, it could be said that they were a match made in heaven. That was why she had tried her best to matchmake the two of them. However, everything was just her own imagination. She didn't fully understand the past between the two of them. If she didn't prescribe the right medicine, how could it be cured? Or perhaps, the gap between the two of them was unbridgeable. Chu Qingyan felt that she had been too idealistic. She didn't understand the two of them in depth at all. She might have made a mistake by trying to matchmake them on her own accord. I'm sorry. Perhaps my good intentions have made things worse. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but lower her head. She felt that it was good, but perhaps to Sister Yenluo, it was actually a form of embarrassment. Cheng Yenluo hadn't expected that her words would cause the little girl to blame herself. She suddenly panicked and scratched her head. She didn't know how to comfort her. In the end, she simply held her hand and said in despair, "Little girl, do you want to hear the story between me and him?" Chu Qingyan immediately raised her head and raised her eyebrows. She smiled slyly and said, "Yes. I really want to." The corners of Cheng Yenluo's mouth stiffened. Why did she have the misconception that she had been deceived? Were you pretending to be weak to win my sympathy? No. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and swore solemnly. Cheng Yenluo couldn't be bothered to argue with her. Thus, the two of them sat on the stone bench in the courtyard. 10 years ago, my father had just taken over the sect. However, at that time, he was already very famous. Murongju entered the sect at that time and was also my father's first disciple. At that time, I was rebellious and felt that my father's mind was focused on studying medical skills. He didn't care about me and my mother at all, so I resented him. When he asked me if I wanted to study medicine, I actually refused. At that time, Murongju entered the sect. Although he was only 8 or 9 years old, he seemed to be born in an aristocratic family. He was well-mannered and radiated brilliance wherever he went. People couldn't help but approach him. Chu Qingyan looked at her with a gentle expression and a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Chu Qingyan felt that Yenluo's gentleness was rare. This was the first time she had heard Yenluo's evaluation of ethereal. What happened after that? She asked. But I was too arrogant at that time and wanted to compete with him. I also took the initiative to tell my father that I wanted to study medicine. I still haven't forgotten my father's shocked expression when he heard that. It was really funny. He said that he had tried so hard for so many years, but he couldn't compete with an outsider for a month. However, I also became my father's second-last disciple. Later, she found out that it was just because she wanted to have common topics with him. He was like a big brother. He was good at taking care of people and learned medicine quickly. However, the direction of my study was different from his. He made and detoxified poisons, while I practiced medicine to save people. However, this didn't affect our competition. As the sect gradually grew stronger, the number of disciples gradually increased. There was also a lot of gossip in a crowded place. His looks were outstanding, and he was liked by the junior sisters. However, he was a humble person, and he was very tolerant of those women who used the excuse of discussing medical skills to get close to him. I lost to him every time we competed in medical skills, so I always lost to him. However, he tolerated me. Now that I think about it, he was really too good to me back then. Cheng Yenluo recalled the past and said in a sweet and sentimental tone. Is that how you fell in love with him? Chu Qingyan asked, supporting her chin with her hand. It turned out that the relationship between the two of them was like this. She felt that it was quite romantic. Chapter 356. When a talented, intelligent, gentle and modest young man intrudes into my life, it's too difficult not to be moved at that age. Cheng Yenluo sighed softly. It's just that I didn't realize my feelings at that time. It was only after an incident that I completely understood what I was chasing in the past. It turned out that it wasn't about winning or losing, but about the way he looked at her. What happened? Chu Qingyan couldn't be more curious after hearing her words. Cheng Yenluo pursed her lips and smiled. My father is the head of a clan, so he thought that I must have enjoyed special treatment. Moreover, Murongju treated me well, so some people, especially women, were not convinced. One of them tricked me to the back of the mountain and trapped me in a fishing net, unable to move. Unfortunately, the sky turned dark and it started to rain heavily. you should know that the nights in the mountains are very cold. Coupled with the heavy rain, it was extremely cold. How can you still laugh? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at Qing Yenluo. Just as she was engrossed in her story, she actually kept her in suspense. Qing Yenluo smiled. Just to make me more pitiful. At that time, I was soaking wet, and the thunder was loud and there were howls of wolves. I thought I was going to die here and was about to lose all hope. At that moment, I heard someone calling me, so I immediately responded. I didn't expect the person to be him. At that time, he saw her in a sorry state and shivering all over. He immediately untied her and took off his coat to wrap her. Xiaoyan, how are you feeling? His voice was trembling. She thought it was because of the strong wind. Very cold. She bit her lips with a pale face, unable to exert any strength. Bear with it, I'll take you back. Seeing that she couldn't walk anymore, he immediately squatted down and carried her on his back. Then, they walked down the mountain step by step. Unfortunately, the rain was too heavy at that time, so heavy that they couldn't open their eyes. The soil was mixed with the water and became loose. He missed a step and the two of them rolled down the cliff. In order to protect her, he was cut by the mountain rocks several times, but she was safe and sound in his arms. It wasn't easy to get out after falling down the cliff, so they found a safe place to hide from the rain and recuperate. She had a fever during the night. He endured the pain and took care of her for the entire night. When she woke up the next day, her fever had subsided. When she opened her eyes, she turned her head and saw the first ray of sunlight shining on his body, even though he was covered in mud and had fallen from grace. But in her eyes, he was more handsome and gentle than ever. Young Master Qianqian was as gentle as jade. That's probably the case. How romantic. Chu Qingyan's eyes sparkled. That's romantic. Aren't your expectations a little too low? Although she said that, the corners of Qing Yenluo's mouth twitched. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at her. Don't be so greedy, okay? What happened after that? That's how you fell in love with him, right? But I'm more interested to know why you two separated. The smile on Qing Yenluo's face slowly faded. We had a tacit understanding for a few years. Father had already prepared to hand over the sect to him in the future. I thought that this would last forever. Unfortunately, one day, he received a letter from the border telling me that he had to leave. I asked him when he would be back, and he said. Qing Yenluo smiled bitterly. The date of his return was uncertain, and he might not come back. At this point, Chu Qingyan suddenly understood. Ethereal must have received a letter from the ice cube at that time. She remembered that the ice cube had a tough battle 6 years ago, and he had suffered serious injuries. Ethereal must have gone to support him at that time. No one knew when they would return from the battlefield. That was why Ethereal had told her that. Between me and the heavy responsibility, he didn't choose me. Qing Yenluo smiled sadly. I think Ethereal cared a lot about you, but he couldn't ignore Her Highness's life and death. Chu Qingyan defended him. Little girl, you don't like anyone. You don't understand. When I'm most happy and looking forward to our future together, this news is like a bolt from the blue. I'm not a person who doesn't know what's right and what's wrong. If he asked me to wait, I would. But he told me not to wait. His feelings for me are only due to the friendship between us. Ha, Qing Yenluo chuckled, but her eyes were red. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Maybe he thought little girl, you don't have to defend him. If he said that because he was afraid that he wouldn't come back, then why didn't he come looking for me in the past 6 years? With the fierce cavalry's ability, it shouldn't be difficult to find someone. Qing Yenluo sneered. Chu Qingyan shut her mouth. What Qing Yenluo said was right. She wanted to ask Ethereal what he was thinking. Qing Yenluo rubbed her eyes. She felt a stinging sensation in her eyes, but she quickly forced it back down. When he left, she hated him, but she couldn't help but worry about him. When she found out that he was safe and sound, her hatred was rekindled. Forget it, it's all in the past. 6 years can change a lot of people. I'm no longer the silly girl he can order around. Now that I know he's alive, it's enough. Let's just leave it at that. Chu Qingyan looked at her deeply. This woman looked strong on the surface, but she was actually the most gentle and kind on the inside. What do you plan to do in the future? Were they just going to let it go like this? I'll go back to the clinic after I'm done with all of you. I won't refuse the blind dates arranged by my father. Maybe I'll meet someone I like. Cheng Yenluo stood up and patted her clothes. She smiled faintly. In this world, there's no such thing as only one person. Let nature take its course. Cheng Yenluo left before she left. That's good too. Chu Qingyan sighed. After Cheng Yenluo's figure disappeared, Chu Qingyan turned around and looked at the person standing under the tall tree. Did you hear what Sister Yenluo said just now? She smiled faintly. He was handsome in a white robe, but his face was very pale. It was obvious that he hadn't recovered from his cold. Yes. He didn't see her when he woke up, so he came to look for her. He didn't expect to hear those words. Those were her heartfelt words that she had never revealed to him. A woman's love, hatred, and resentment for him. And now, she didn't want to persist and let it go. After his shock, only desolation was left in his eyes. I think Sister Yenluo still has feelings for you. Before Chu Qingyan could finish, Ethereal turned around. Thank you, young princess. You don't have to waste your time on us in the future. Since she had chosen to let it go, what right did he have to pester her? Chu Qingyan was speechless as she watched his lonely figure slowly leave. Footsteps sounded beside her and stopped beside her. She turned around and hugged him. Big iceberg, did I do something bad with good intentions again? Chapter 357. Xiao Su stood beside her and placed one hand on her shoulder while the other caressed her head. Why do you say that? She buried her head in his chest and said softly, if I wasn't curious, Sister Yenluo wouldn't have told me about it. If she didn't tell me, Ethereal wouldn't have heard about it. That way, he wouldn't have this feeling of having nothing to live for. You're thinking too much. This has nothing to do with you. He can only blame himself for running around when he's sick. Although Xiao Su hadn't overheard their conversation, he had an extraordinary ability to make deductions. She was slightly taken aback. How could he say that about his subordinates? Big Ice Block was scheming. Xiao Su didn't notice the change in her expression and continued, besides, my subordinates aren't that weak. Chu Qingyan tightened her arms. She could feel the warmth from the Big Ice Block who had just woken up. She couldn't help but want to draw more warmth from him. I still feel uneasy, she mumbled. Take care of yourself. Let them deal with their own problems. Xiao Su didn't understand why she was so concerned about other people's affairs. Chu Qingyan didn't like the Big Ice Block's attitude. She raised her head and poked his chest. Big Ice Block, Ethereal's matter is more or less related to you. He left Yenluo because of his responsibility. That's why the two of you acted like strangers when you met today. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Are you blaming me? These words were obviously threatening, and Chu Qingyan immediately buried herself in his arms again. No, I'm just stating the facts. Xiao Su chuckled when he saw the woman burrowing into his arms like an ostrich. However, his tone became serious. Qingyan, you have to understand that some things can't be changed because of your status. You have two choices. Do it or don't do it. However, responsibility will make you understand that there are some things that you have to do. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she was slightly taken aback. She clenched her fingers and grabbed his clothes, but her gaze froze. So all these years, Big Ice Cube had been doing what he had to do based on the responsibility on his shoulders? When he was a child, other people would get into trouble and jump up and down, but he would burn the midnight oil to study. When he was young, other people were doted on by their parents, but he led his troops into battle, going through fire and fire. Now, while others were enjoying wealth and glory, he had to face the vermin of the imperial court and be exterminated. Actually, if this responsibility is too heavy, I'd be like Sister Yenluo. I'd rather you not have it, she said softly. But in this quiet world, his hearing was so good, how could he not hear it? He just pretended not to hear it. She was still young. When she grew up and had more ties, she would understand. I'm hungry. Let's go eat. She let go of his hand and looked at him with her hands behind her back. Her recovery ability had always been stronger than others. Yes, he replied. Big ice cube, will it snow in Junlan? No, it's warmer than Sichuan. Then will it snow in Sichuan? Yes. It might already be snowing. Unfortunately, I can't see it. Next year, you'll be able to see it. He blurted out that he would take her to see it next year, but unfortunately, the words stopped at the tip of his tongue. Without the antidote, it was hard to say what would happen in the future. Okay. Chu Qingyan moved closer to him and mischievously blocked the cold wind. Xiao Su didn't argue with her. Instead, he pulled open his cloak and wrapped it around her, blocking the wind for her. Although it didn't snow in Junlan, the cold wind was bone-chilling. After Chu Qingyan and Jun Zhicheng returned to the palace, the imperial study was lit up again. Your Majesty, we've caught Wu Qing and his family. Wu Qing passed away last year, but his son and daughter-in-law are still alive, Lao Bai reported with his head bowed. Wu Qing was the former chancellor of the Supreme Court. According to Xiao Su, he was a suspect in the poisoning of Emperor Mingxian. How is it? Jun Zixing paused and looked up at him. Lao Bai sighed softly and said slowly, Your Majesty, the King of England is very accurate. He announced that King Ping was indeed involved in the poisoning of Your Majesty. Wu Qing's son confessed that King Ping instructed their father to do so. He wanted to frame others and get rid of King Ping's suspicions. After their father did this, he used his old age as an excuse to retire and return to his hometown. King Ping even gave them a large sum of money to settle down and guaranteed that they wouldn't have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of their lives. After saying that, Lao Bai saw His Majesty's gloomy expression. He handed over a confession. This is the confession of Wu Qing's family members. Jun Zixing took it and skimmed through it. His face was so dark that it could drip water. King Ping is too hateful. So he's just a wolf in a scholar's clothing. He slammed the paper on the table. The humiliation of being deceived surged in his heart. It seemed that King Ping's various gestures of goodwill towards him were all ambitious. It was just to gain his trust and achieve his goal. Your Majesty, please calm down. You don't have to hurt yourself because of such a person. Lao Bai immediately stepped forward to persuade him. Jun Zixing raised his hand, indicating that he didn't need to say anything else. How are the other matters? We've caught the ringleader of the rumor mongers. We're interrogating him now, but we haven't gotten any results yet. As for that young Master Lin, we've found his whereabouts, but it'll take some time to bring him back. Jun Zixing nodded. Hurry up. We can't delay any longer. Yes. Lao Bai agreed. He understood how urgent the matter was. It could be said that they were in a race against time. In the afternoon of the second day, Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan sat on the couch and played chess. Hua Ling stood at the side and reported, Master, King Jing and King Jin have formed an alliance. This is a secret letter from the Wind Division. Xiao Su took it. After reading it, he said calmly, It seems that the two of them can't wait any longer. But this is good too. It'll save us a lot of effort to deal with them. Chu Qingyan took the letter. After reading it, she didn't understand what Big Ice Cube meant. Although she had sorted out the information with them for the whole night and had a good understanding of Junlan, she still didn't understand how Big Ice Cube would help Jun Zixing take back his military power. At this moment, the sound of, "Your Majesty has arrived," interrupted Chu Qingyan's train of thought. She turned to look at the person who was holding a chess piece and preparing to play. Counting the time, today was the deadline he gave Jun Zixing. Jun Zixing is here. Chu Qingyan prepared to get off the couch. He has legs. He'll walk in himself, Xiao Su said calmly as he placed his chess piece. Chu Qingyan felt that she wasn't as strong-willed as Big Ice Cube. She obediently got off the couch and stood at the side, waiting for Jun Zixing's arrival. Jun Zixing stepped into the inner hall with Lao Bai. When he saw Xiao Su, his expression relaxed. "King of England, I've found out what happened." With that, Jun Zixing asked Lao Bai to hand the information in his hands to Xiao Su. Huo Ling took the papers and placed them on the table, but Xiao Su didn't reach out to take a look. "Okay, then let's begin." Xiao Su put down his chess piece and said calmly. Chapter 358. When Jun Zixing saw his actions, he immediately understood that Xiao Su already knew about these things. It was just that he wanted to convince Jun Zixing so that he could verify it himself. Otherwise, with Jun Zixing's knowledge, he would never believe the truth of these things. He admired Xiao Su again. This kind of person was really good at playing with people's hearts. He grasped every detail of Jun Zixing's thoughts just right. In fact, Jun Zixing was wrong. Xiao Su just didn't want him to be suspicious and noisy when he was planning. He also didn't like others to criticize him when he was doing things. "Then, Your Majesty, please tell me about the recent movements of these vassal kings," Xiao Su asked. Jun Zixing nodded. "King Jing and King Jin formed an alliance yesterday. I've planted spies around them, but because they're too cautious, this is all the spies could find out. King Jing and King Jin were friends when they were young. However, they valued benefits more now, so it was reasonable for them to form an alliance. King Zhe has recently sent troops to suppress bandits. Instead of suppressing bandits, it's more accurate to say that he wants to move his troops to a town near the capital. It'll be more convenient for him to act then. King Zhe didn't report it and took the initiative to lead troops there. It could be said that he was looking down on the imperial power. However, Jun Zixing couldn't criticize him in these troubled times. It was already very sad that the emperor had to go to this extent. King Ping has been very well behaved recently. He hasn't done anything. No matter how his spies investigated, King Ping was like a cocoon that was wrapped up from head to toe. They couldn't find a single flaw. Although Xiao Su wasn't very satisfied with what Jun Zixing said, not everyone was his subordinate and could investigate everything clearly. He pondered for a moment before saying, "Turin, report to His Majesty the specific information we've gathered recently." "Yes." Turin bowed and said to Jun Zixing. "According to what I've learned, King Jing and King Jin's alliance plan to send assassins into the palace in 7 days. They'll send a large number of troops into the palace in the name of protecting the emperor." The veins on Gentleman Xing's face bulged. "These two traitors." "Your Majesty, please don't be angry," Turin continued. "Prince Zhe has already sent troops to enter Xiang City and is quietly waiting for Prince Jing and Prince Jing's actions, preparing to follow them." Jun Zixing's expression turned even uglier. "What about King Ping?" Although King Ping is biding his time, there are only 60,000 soldiers left in his fief. The other 60,000 have already disguised themselves and are preparing to sneak into the capital, Turin reported truthfully. Jun Zixing slammed the table. "These people are too audacious. They're simply disgraceful." Chu Qingyan was speechless at Jun Zixing, who only knew how to scold people. Now that all the problems were listed, the key was how to solve them. However, Gentleman Xing wasn't that weak, and he immediately came back to his senses and said to Xiao Su, "It seems that in 7 days, these people will be in chaos. What should we do?" These people were already on the verge of making a move. As long as one of them made a move, the others wouldn't be able to sit still and wait for changes. No one was willing to fall behind, because this was an important moment. It meant that whoever could rush to that position the fastest would have that position. Manpower was important, but timing was even more important. Moreover, they were in such a situation where they were evenly matched. Zhen Zisheng was very worried about the development of the situation. We can't let them form such a situation. You only have a few 100,000 soldiers under your command, and they have at least 400,000 in total. Therefore, we can't fight them head-on. We can only use our wits. Xiao Su analyzed. I'd like to hear the details. Zhen Zisheng lowered his head slightly and asked, putting down the airs of a ruler. First, we have to break the alliance between Prince Jing and Prince Jin. It's best to let them fight each other. Xiao Su paused. I don't think your majesty has forgotten Prince Jing's true identity. We can make use of it now. Zhen Zisheng had no clue at first, but when he heard Xiao Su's reminder, he immediately understood. You're saying that we should let Prince Jin know that Prince Jing doesn't have the blood of the Junlan imperial family flowing in him. Given Prince Jin's insatiable nature, he'll definitely use this opportunity to swallow up Prince Jing's troops. When the time comes, he'll submit a memorial to us. We can't take back Prince Jing's military power so quickly, so we'll have to let him temporarily control it. But won't that benefit Prince Jin in the end? Xiao Su raised his brows and glanced at him. Did I say that Prince Jin would definitely survive? Swords had no eyes. When two people fought, it wasn't impossible for both sides to suffer heavy losses. Zhen Zisheng immediately gave him a thumbs up. Then these 200,000 soldiers will return to our hands. It's quite simple, but as for the specifics, this prince's subordinates will assist your majesty in arranging people to do it, Xiao Su said calmly. Good. We were worried at first, but with your words, we can rest assured. A smile appeared on Zhen Zisheng's face. Then 7 days later, we'll be able to get rid of these two major problems. No, 7 days is too long. We'll bring it forward to 3 days. But didn't they arrange for assassins to kidnap us? If we bring it forward, won't we be alerting them? Zhen Zisheng was worried that Prince Zhe and Prince Ping wouldn't make a move after receiving the news. When the time came, there would be even more uncertainties. Chu Qingyan immediately knew that Zhen Zisheng wanted to take advantage of the 7 days later to get rid of these 4 people in one fell swoop. His appetite was too big. Be careful that a man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Xiao Su didn't take Zhen Zisheng's worries to heart. 7 days later, the imperial family will perform a ritual. They originally planned to make a move on that day, but as the astrology bureau said, that day is inauspicious, so it's not impossible to bring it forward. Huo Ling added, and this subordinate has already found the hiding place of those assassins. When the time comes, as long as we capture them and have our own people impersonate them, your majesty's life won't be in any danger. As soon as Huo Ling finished speaking, Chu Qingyan immediately understood the Big Ice Cube's plan. It was to bring forward the ritual so that Prince Jing and Prince Jin would order the assassins to carry out the assassination in advance. The two allied armies would quickly rush to the capital. On the way, they would deliberately reveal Prince Jing's identity to Prince Jin. When internal strife arose, the two would kill each other. Then, they would let the assassins die silently and bear the blame themselves. As for Prince Zhe and Prince Ping, because they heard the news of the rescue mission, they wouldn't know what happened between Prince Jing and Prince Jin in a short period of time. They would only focus on fighting for the throne and see who would arrive at the capital first. The plan was perfect, but they couldn't make a single mistake. Chu Qingyan understood, and as the emperor, Zhen Zisheng understood even more. What a brilliant plan! Zhen Zisheng couldn't help but praise. Xiao Su lowered his head and sipped his tea, ignoring Zhen Zisheng's praise. After Zhen Zisheng understood the plan, he still couldn't figure it out. Prince Zhe is naturally suspicious, and Prince Ping hides his abilities. How should we deal with them? Chapter 359. Xiao Su used the teapot lid to gently stir the tea leaves floating on the surface of the water. His tone was calm. King Ping is naturally suspicious, so we can take advantage of him. King Ping is cautious. If he knows that King Jing and King Jean have been defeated, he'll stake everything on a single throw. You'll have to deal with everything at once. Xiao Su didn't say much, but Gentleman Sheng could hear his calmness. Since Xiao Su had spoken, it meant that he already had a plan. He chose to believe him. About the rumors about you killing your brothers and harming your sisters, now that we know who's behind it, we can turn the tables and let the public's opinion shift to someone else. You can also build your image as the ruler of a country, Xiao Su reminded him. Gentleman Sheng nodded. Although this matter wasn't very serious and was just a rumor, the public's opinion could make or break a person. If he could use this opportunity to clear himself of suspicion, why not? If it was settled before Zhe Wang mobilized his troops, when Zhe Wang invaded, the people would also have a conflicted mentality. When he was arrested, no one would say that he was looking for Zhe Wang as a scapegoat and randomly splashing dirty water on him. After Gentleman Sheng thought it through, he couldn't help but be surprised again. Details determined success or failure. Xiao Su's every move wasn't useless. Every move he made was very delicate. It seemed like the pieces were scattered all over the chessboard, but as long as the last piece was placed, all the pieces would come to life. Your Majesty, I can't guarantee that nothing will go wrong. I can only say that I'll do my best, Xiao Su looked at him and said slowly. I understand. There's no such thing as an invincible general on the battlefield. If such a meticulous plan can't save Junlan, I'll accept it. Gentleman Sheng smiled and sighed. Xiao Su didn't say anything. He only ordered Turan and Hualing to do what they should do next. After everything was done, Xiao Su let Turan and Hualing leave with Gentleman Sheng. Thank you, King of England. If there's anything else, I'll take my leave. Gentleman Sheng said with a smile. Your Majesty, Xiao Su suddenly said. Gentleman Sheng turned to look at him in confusion. Is there anything that hasn't been resolved? No, Xiao Su shook his head and said seriously, Your Majesty, don't worry too much. I just hope that you can remember your promise. Gentleman Sheng couldn't help but laugh. A gentleman's promise is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. I won't forget it. Even if I lose, I'll send you to the border of Jiang Kingdom unharmed. However, since Xiao Su had said so, it proved that this mess could still be cleaned up. Junzi Xing came with a stomach full of worries, but when he left, the burden on his shoulders was much lighter, and his footsteps were full of vigor. After the group of people left, the entire crowded hall suddenly became empty. Calm. Stop. If it's just a compliment, then forget it. Xiao Su laughed and shook his head. Big Ice Cube, I really think that you're amazing. It turns out that those things were just a prelude. One by one, they became a chain of plans. How can a person be so smart? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but praise him. Listening to you is better than reading books for 10 years. Today, she had witnessed a series of plans, which had completely overturned all her previous knowledge. It turned out that the plots in novels really existed and weren't imagined by those authors. However, she didn't mean that Big Ice Cube was insidious. There was no right or wrong in the fight for power. Xiao Su glanced at her coldly. You can read more and experience more, but it depends on your talent. Chu Qingyan felt like she had been stabbed by an arrow by Big Ice Cube. However, she still had something to ask him, so she didn't care about the belittling in his words. Big Ice Cube, since Prince Jing and Prince Jean have decided to take action in 7 days, why did you bring it forward? Aren't you afraid that Prince Jing and Prince Jean will be suspicious? Xiao Su looked down at her. I didn't expect that you would be enlightened one day. Ignoring the fire in her eyes, Xiao Su curved his lips. Didn't you want to leave Junlan and go to Jiang country? If you continue to lose sleep, you'll really become a panda. Chu Qingyan frowned. She had accidentally mentioned the panda to him, but what did Big Ice Cube say have to do with bringing it forward? However, after Big Ice Cube said this, he calmly picked up his teacup and drank tea. Obviously, he didn't want to discuss this issue with her anymore. That proved that his words were the answer. Suddenly, there was a flash of light. Chu Qingyan had an epiphany. Big Ice Cube was saying that he wanted to bring the plan forward to appease her. The sooner they succeeded, the sooner they could leave Junlan. She stole a glance at the calm person and felt a warmth in her heart. Big Ice Cube was taking such a big risk for her. She was slightly moved. But won't this risk be great? She was still worried. There are pros and cons. At least it will bring forward the four kings' plans, so they won't have so much time to react. It will also prevent unforeseen events. Moreover, Prince Jing and Prince Jing are both very conceited. If there are no accidents, they won't doubt their own plan, Xiao Su replied. Chu Qingyan nodded. By the time they reacted, the situation was already clear. They had to bite the bullet and do it. If Junlan was passively waiting for the four kings to attack before, this time, it was better to say that Junlan was actively waiting for the four kings' actions. Big Ice Cube, if the plan goes smoothly and Prince Jing and Prince Jin's forces are taken back, what do you plan to do with Prince Ping and Prince Zhe? Zhen Zixing also asked him this question. She didn't get an answer, but she was still curious. According to the information collected by Hualing, Prince Ping and Prince Zhe were the two most difficult to deal with among the four kings. Xiao Su rubbed his eyebrows. He felt that this little fellow had a lot of questions, but he didn't answer her like he did Zhen Zixing. Prince Zhe is cunning and suspicious, but he is also timid. Once someone fails, he will probably be overcautious. Moreover, his most doted son is already under the control of the Wind sect. When the time comes, we can just subdue him. Chu Qingyan gasped. Since when did the Big Ice Cube capture someone's family? What's more, he was able to do it so quietly. He was simply too powerful. Everyone has a weakness. As long as you grasp their weakness, you can break them without attacking. Xiao Su looked at her mouth, which was wide enough to stuff an egg in, and added another sentence. Chu Qingyan nodded repeatedly. Big Ice Cube was really an expert in scheming. She couldn't help but admire him. Then what about Prince Ping? Chu Qingyan stopped exclaiming and asked with her head tilted. You're asking too many questions. It's time to eat. Xiao Su stood up and ignored her. Chu Qingyan was depressed. Would it kill him to ask so many questions? It was very ungentlemanly of him to keep her in suspense. Chapter 360. Unfortunately, no matter how she tried to coax information out of him at the dining table, Big Ice Cube remained indifferent to her. In the end, he even said that he didn't talk during the meal, which left her speechless. Her desire to know was quickly extinguished. She comforted herself. In any case, she would find out soon, so why bother asking him? Perhaps it was because Chu Qingyan had stopped bothering him, but Xiao Su wasn't used to it. You're not going to ask? He put down his chopsticks and looked at her. I don't talk during the meal. She harumphed coldly. You don't want to know? He raised his brows. I don't want to know, I don't want to know. Chu Qingyan stuffed a big mouthful of rice into her mouth and ignored him. Xiao Su nodded. I didn't intend to tell you anyway. PFFF, Chu Qingyan looked at the table full of rice and suddenly had the urge to go crazy. As for the culprit, he had already stood up and left a sentence, this king is full. Then, he left. Chu Qingyan clenched her chopsticks so tightly that they made crunching sounds. Shi Ning was trembling with fear as she asked, Master, are you all right? I'm very good, very good. Chu Qingyan took another big mouthful of rice and couldn't eat anymore. I'm full too. Chu Qingyan put down her bowl and chopsticks and got up to leave. Xining looked at the table full of food and muttered in her heart, Master must be full from anger. However, Xining also felt a little strange at this moment. It seemed that His Highness liked to tease Master recently, and every time, it was Master who was so angry that she stomped her feet. Sigh, there was always someone to defeat someone else. Xining shook her head as she tidied up. In any case, it was fine as long as His Highness and Master got along well. But it would be great if Jinxin could talk more like this. He was always so cold and aloof. What was she thinking about? She immediately patted her cheeks to wake herself up. At the same time, Cheng Yenluo brought the dishes into Ethereal's room. Let's eat first. She called out to him. She knew that his high fever had already subsided to a normal temperature. There was no movement behind her, so she turned around to look at him after setting the table. However, she saw him looking at her deeply. It was as if he was looking at her, but also as if he was looking at something through her. Ever since they had reunited, she had rarely seen him like this. Cheng Yenluo thought that his high fever had damaged his brain. She walked over and placed her hand on his forehead to check if he was burning up again. But as soon as she stretched out her hand, before she could touch his forehead, he dodged it. Cheng Yenluo was taken aback. The atmosphere instantly turned awkward. Ethereal had only done it subconsciously. Seeing her withdraw her hand with an unnatural expression, she immediately regretted it. Xiaoyan, I'm fine now. Let's eat. He lifted the blanket and got up. Then, he walked to the dining table. Cheng Yenluo had wanted to have a meal with him, but she felt that it was too awkward. She thought about it and decided not to. I've already eaten. Take your time. I'll come and clean up later. She smiled and was about to turn around and leave. Xiaoyan, Ethereal suddenly called out. She stopped in her tracks and turned around to look at him. His head was slightly lowered, so she couldn't see his expression clearly. However, she didn't know why her heart ached. What's the matter? She asked in a low voice. I'm fine. You don't have to take care of me anymore. Thank you. With that, he picked up his chopsticks and started eating. His distant and polite words made her feel as if they had returned to the time when they had first met. He was so polite to everyone, but there was also a sense of distance. Okay, you're welcome. It took her a lot of effort to find her voice again. Then, she pushed the door open and left. The person who had been eating calmly just now slowly put down his chopsticks and covered his eyes. I'm sorry, Xiaoyan. If I'm your burden, then I won't restrain you anymore. The man that Master will introduce to you will definitely be better than me. Perhaps he won't love you as much as I do, but you won't have to wait for someone in fear anymore. A man who can't promise you or give you a sense of security is better off leaving as soon as possible. If there's someone you like, then you should just marry him. I'm a person who walks on the edge of a knife. I don't deserve your sincere devotion. I'll let you go like I did in the past. Indeed, there's no one in this world who can't be together. However, I'm afraid that I won't be able to meet a good girl like you again. The night darkened. Whose silhouette was more lonely than the night? Cheng Yenluo left the room and quickly walked back to her room. She turned around and closed the door, then pressed her entire body against the door. She was in a daze, as if something had been cut open and dug out. Had she really reached the end this time? Cheng Yenluo stretched out her hand and looked at the marriage line. When she was young, her father had asked a good friend to read her fortune. The fortune said that the road to love would be bumpy, but in the end, it would be blissful. The bumpy road was with him. The blissful road to bliss was with someone else. Her heart was in a mess. She should have heaved a sigh of relief and ended things with him. Why did she feel even more perplexed? Inadvertently, a drop of water fell. She was slightly surprised and her vision gradually blurred. She raised her hand to cover her eyes and slowly squatted down. She suppressed her voice and cried like a child. It was already late at night. When Chu Qingyan passed by Cheng Yenluo's room, she realized that there was no light at all. She couldn't help but feel curious and knocked on the door. No one answered, so she tried to push the door. Unexpectedly, the door opened. However, when she pushed the door open, the candle inside lit up. The light made her a little dazzled. She rubbed her eyes and asked, "Sister Yenluo, what are you doing in the room? Why didn't you light the candle? I accidentally fell asleep just now." Cheng Yenluo placed the candle on the table and looked indifferent. Chu Qingyan's sharp ears could hear the hoarseness in her voice, but she wisely chose not to ask. "Oh, I see. Have you eaten?" "I don't want to eat. I want to drink." "Little girl, go and get me a few jars of wine." Cheng Yenluo looked at her with a mischievous smile. Chu Qingyan touched her nose. Something was wrong. But a few jars of wine. Her alcohol tolerance was too good. However, seeing that she was in a bad mood, Chu Qingyan didn't argue with her. She turned around and ordered the palace servants to prepare the wine. On the roof, Chu Qingyan gathered her cloak. Fortunately, Big Ice Cube had draped it over her before she left. Otherwise, she would have been frozen stiff tonight. The people in the palace were all discerning. When they heard that she wanted wine, they immediately and attentively prepared a few side dishes. At this moment, she turned to look at the person beside her, who picked up a jar of wine and poured it into her mouth. She was a little worried. "Drink slowly. No one is going to snatch it from you. Aren't you drinking?" Cheng Yenluo shook the wine jar in front of her. Chu Qingyan shook her head. "If Big Ice Cube smells the wine when I go back, I'll probably be scolded." "No, she would definitely be scolded. Your Big Ice Cube is like an old mother." "Oh yes, you too. It's not good to be too obedient. You'll be eaten alive in the future," Cheng Yenluo said with a smile. She had drunk some wine and didn't feel restrained. However, Chu Qingyan's face stiffened when she heard her words. Chapter 361. What the hell? What was she talking about? Did she know how to chat? Chu Qingyan was a little annoyed as she glared at the person who was drinking happily. However, she quickly realized that something was wrong. "Sister Yenluo, are you sad?" There seemed to be some suspicious traces of tears at the corners of her eyes. Her eyes reflected the light from the lanterns and she could vaguely see that they were red. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but ask in a soft voice. Cheng Yenluo couldn't help but laugh, as if she had heard something funny. "I'm not sad. On the contrary, I'm very happy." "Happy?" Chu Qingyan felt that she didn't seem to be happy at all. "Yes, I'm happy that I've finally gotten rid of a future that I can't see. It's a love that doesn't have the present. It's a love that ended without a cause." After she finished speaking, she took a sip of wine. The wine flowed down from the corner of her mouth, glistening under the night light. Chu Qingyan also noticed the tears that flowed down from the corners of her eyes. Chu Qingyan gritted her teeth. She felt a little sad, but she didn't know what had happened between Cheng Yenluo and Ethereal. She could only persuade her. "Don't drink too much. It's cold and it's not good for your health." Cheng Yenluo slowly put down the wine jar and wiped her lips with her sleeve. Her red lips, which were already stained with water and were glowing, became even redder after she wiped them with force. They were like roses that bloomed in the night, bright and gorgeous. Her red cheeks were so delicate that they looked like they could be broken by the wind. Against the pitch-black night sky behind her, her fair skin was tinged with rosy red. Any man who saw this scene would be fascinated. Chu Qingyan wanted to take a bite of her lips, as if they were honey peaches. "There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a celebration." Cheng Yenluo smiled insincerely. She hugged the wine jar, but her expression was ethereal. Chu Qingyan felt for a chicken claw and stuffed it into her mouth. She crunched on it. "Oh, then drink more. Enjoy yourself. Since she couldn't persuade her, she would just let her continue drinking. Once she was drunk, she would be able to sleep soundly. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, Cheng Yenluo stopped pouring the wine. She tilted her head and said to Chu Qingyan, "Little girl, don't we always have talents to liven things up when we drink? Give me a performance." This was a classic example of a fire at the city gate bringing disaster to the fish in the moat. Chu Qingyan spat out a bone and spread out her hands. "What do you want to hear?" "As long as it's suitable for the occasion." Cheng Yenluo tapped the edge of the wine jar and said with a smile. She was extremely flirtatious and full of smiles. She was like a beautiful flower, naturally seductive. Chu Qingyan looked at the person in front of her who was leaning on the wine jar and smiling at her. She couldn't help but sigh. What a beautiful woman. What a pity. Okay, let me think about it. Chu Qingyan didn't want a drunk person to mess around, but she still agreed. Sing as you please. If you sing well, I'll reward you, Cheng Yenluo said with a smile. Then I'll sing a song that I used to like very much. Chu Qingyan recalled a television series that she used to be obsessed with. The song in the series had always touched her deeply. She hummed softly. Don't let me be afraid to think about the silent past. And the regret of trying to collect it. I don't want to be brave now. I don't want to be too strong. I want to love its old and worn appearance. The moment Chu Qingyan opened her mouth, Cheng Yenluo felt that something was amiss. The lyrics sounded a little sad. She wanted to interrupt her and change the song, but she didn't say anything. I feel too lonely. I'm in a place where you're not. Although the sky is blue, my heart is cold. I'm too lonely. You're somewhere else. Happiness isn't as simple as it seems. The song sounded a little sad. Chu Qingyan sang it softly a few times. When she turned her head to look at the person beside her, she realized that she had buried her head in her arms. Her shoulders seemed to be trembling. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt that she had chosen the wrong song. Sister Yenluo, I think that this song suits the situation. I was wrong. I'll change it for you. Don't cry. After a while, the person lifted her head and stared at her with watery eyes. Who said that? Sand got into my eyes. Okay. Sand got into your eyes. Let me blow on it for you. Chu Qingyan pretended to help her, but she pushed her away. Forget it. Lend me your shoulder. I'm tired. Cheng Yenluo leaned her head on her shoulder in a domineering manner. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. Did drunk people like to lie? Were they prideful and domineering? After a while, she heard her even breathing. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. What was going on? One was drowning her sorrows in alcohol, while the other was probably having a hard time sleeping. Speaking of the devil, he arrived. Ethereal appeared on the rooftop, his body cold and frosty. Why are you here? Chu Qingyan lifted her head and looked at him in surprise. I heard from Xining that you were admiring the moon on the rooftop, so I came up to take a look. Ethereal's gaze landed on Cheng Yenluo. There was a hint of pity in his eyes. I'll return the person drowning her sorrows in alcohol. Chu Qingyan pointed at the person on her shoulder. Ethereal nodded. Without another word, he reached out and scooped her up. Then, he quickly disappeared from the rooftop. Chu Qingyan looked at the empty rooftop and smiled. Sigh, I'm the only one left now. It's a lonely cold night. Should I have some wine to warm myself up? She muttered to herself. She didn't really intend to drink. She didn't want to wake up with a splitting headache tomorrow. Unfortunately, someone took her words seriously. You want to drink? A cold voice sounded beside her ear. Chu Qingyan was startled. She stiffened her neck and turned to look. Wasn't that person in a black brocade robe Big Ice Cube? I was just saying. Chu Qingyan immediately raised her hands in surrender. Xiao Su snorted coldly, but didn't pursue the matter. Instead of sleeping in the middle of the night, you're wailing like a ghost and howling like a wolf. Very good, very good. Chu Qingyan shrank her neck when she heard the word very good twice in a row. I'm keeping someone company. Xiao Su didn't want to hear her explanation. He looked at her coldly. Aren't you going to get up? Are you going to sit here all night? Big Ice Cube was so fierce tonight. Chu Qingyan's eyes crinkled. She looked embarrassed. I'm numb from the cold. Xiao Su's eyes twitched. Without hesitation, he bent down and scooped her up. Hold on tight. Okay. Chu Qingyan obediently hugged his neck and closed her eyes. She could only hear the cold wind blowing in her ears. After a moment of dizziness, she landed on the ground. She thought that Big Ice Cube would put her down, but she never thought that he would directly carry her into her room. Did you forget what this king said to you? He placed her on the bed and stood with his hands behind his back. Chu Qingyan consciously pulled the blanket over herself. You're not allowed to go out in the middle of the night. This king thought you forgot. Xiao Su's voice carried a trace of mockery. Chu Qingyan knew that she was in the wrong, so she reached out to tug at his sleeve. I was wrong. There won't be a next time. You still want a next time? His threatening tone was heavy. She immediately shook her head. No. Sleep. Xiao Su coldly ordered. Chu Qingyan shrank back. You're not going to tell me stories. Not today. Stingy. Chu Qingyan muttered in her heart. Chapter 362. Xiao Su watched her close her eyes before he turned around and left, closing the door behind him. He did not have time to accompany the little girl tonight. He had to pay close attention to the movements of the vassals in Junlan. Gentleman Sheng ordered the sacrificial ceremony to be brought forward. Although there were some objections among the officials, they could only carry out the order since the emperor had spoken. Once Gentleman Sheng gave the order, the vassals began to move. Prince Jing and Prince Jean discussed throughout the night. Second brother, what do you think of this matter? Prince Jean asked straightforwardly as soon as he arrived at the meeting place. Prince Jing stroked his beard with a disapproving expression. According to the spies, the astrology bureau divined that there will be heavy rain in 7 days. It's not auspicious, so the sacrificial ceremony has been brought forward to 3 days later. You don't have to make a fuss. Prince Jean thought about it and felt that his second brother was right. He nodded and said, since you've already found out, I'm relieved. So, shall we bring forward the assassination plan? Of course. Only the time has changed, but everything else is the same. We can move forward too. Prince Jing said with a smile. The new emperor has just taken over the court. How can he have extra energy to guard against us? Don't worry, third brother. Once we take over the country, we'll share the glory of this golden age. Prince Jean smiled slyly. I'm relieved to hear that, second brother. When we reach the capital, I'm afraid that fourth brother and fifth brother won't even have time to react. When we take over the capital, we'll join forces and destroy them. Then we'll have nothing to worry about. Third brother, you're right. Come, let's toast to our bright future. Prince Jing raised his wine cup and laughed heartily. Prince Jean raised his cup. All right. For the sake of the plan in 3 days, the two of them did not drink too much. After discussing the details, the two of them parted ways. After sending off Prince Jing's carriage, Prince Jean planned to return to his residence to rest. Suddenly, someone came to visit him. He did not want to pay attention to it, but the attendant said that it was Lord Li. Prince Jean thought about it and summoned him. Li Do was his trusted official. Something important must have happened for him to visit him so late at night. Li Do rushed in. As soon as he saw Prince Jean, he immediately said, Lord, this humble subject has received a shocking piece of news." After saying that, he whispered into Prince Jin's ear. Hearing this, Prince Jin was shocked. "Is that true? This humble subject has already confirmed it, and the culprit has been caught. Lord, what do you think we should do?" Li De couldn't make up his mind. The moment he stepped into the house today, he received this news. Prince Jing was actually not His Majesty Ming Xian's biological child. He was actually born from concubine Xiao Shu's illicit affair with another man. This was a huge matter because their lord was currently working with Prince Jing. That's good. This king didn't want to cooperate with him, so as to avoid being bitten by him. Now, this news has given this king a very good reason to completely withdraw his troops. Ha ha ha, the heavens are helping me. Prince Jin laughed heartily. He had long had enough of his second son's arrogant personality. He had originally planned to secretly deal with him after seizing the throne, but now that he had evidence in his hands, even if he killed him, when the time came, he would be able to take out the evidence, and it would be reasonable. Hence, Prince Jin immediately instructed Li De in a low voice. After hearing this, Li De praised repeatedly, "Lord, this is a good plan. Not only can you get rid of Prince Jing, but you can also take all of his troops under your command. This is like adding wings to a tiger." Prince Jin smiled proudly. "My second son has always been superior to this king. Now, this king will let him have a taste of being stepped on." Li De agreed. "How can Prince Jing compare to you, Lord? Go, do as I say." "Yes." The night was dark and the wind was strong. It was the perfect time to kill and rob. Outside a hidden courtyard in Junlan's capital, Turan led dozens of people into it in the dark. At this moment, the men in black inside were sleeping soundly. No one had expected an assassination attempt to occur so suddenly. The other party was not on guard, and they were quickly dealt with one by one. "Change into their clothes." Turan looked at the corpses on the ground. His expression did not change as he immediately gave the order. These people were the assassins that Prince Jin and Prince Jing had arranged to assassinate Gentleman Sheng in 3 days. Yes. Soon, the courtyard was cleaned up. No one would be able to tell that there had been a cruel battle here just now. Not long after, a subordinate reported with a letter, "This is a secret letter from Prince Jin." Turan took it and glanced at it. "Master is right. Prince Jin has brought forward the assassination time. We'll beat him at his own game. Send this message to Master." "Yes, Master." Xiao Lai accepted the order and retreated. 3 days later, Gentleman Sheng went to Tianlan Temple to offer sacrifices, accompanied by hundreds of officials. When the ceremony was halfway through, the assassins in black suddenly appeared and took Gentleman Sheng to the palace. Gentleman Sheng sealed the palace and did not allow anyone to enter. King Jin had used his identity as King Jing to threaten King Jing in a town that he was unwilling to leave. When King Jing retaliated, King Jin had surrounded King Jing with the troops that he had arranged beforehand and killed him. After Prince Jing's death, Prince Jin took his military order and planned to command Prince Jing's 3 armies. Unfortunately, he was killed in his room by Huoling before he could hold the order. Huoling glanced at Prince Jin on the ground and said to the people behind him, "Spread the news that Prince Jing was killed by Prince Jin." In order to take revenge, Prince Jing's remaining forces sneaked into Prince Jin's room and killed him. "Yes, Master." Xiao Lai accepted the order. Huoling looked at the 2 military orders in his hand and smiled mysteriously. This happened on the day Gentleman Sheng was kidnapped. Therefore, Huoling sent people to block the news about Prince Jing and Prince Jin. The matter was quickly covered up. The outside world trembled in fear because the new emperor was kidnapped. Meetings were held one after another, trying to rescue the new emperor before he was hurt. But strangely, the assassins did not do anything else after taking Gentleman Sheng into the palace. However, if anyone wanted to sneak into the palace, they would be caught and thrown out. The civil and military officials were even more afraid of this group of assassins. They did not dare to act rashly. While everyone was busy outside, the side chamber was leisurely. Gentleman Sheng was drinking tea and eating desserts. His expression was relaxed as he lamented, "We haven't been so free in a long time." Chu Qingyan was lying on the table when she heard him say this. She couldn't help but glance at him. This emperor was indeed very busy. It was more relaxing to be an unemployed person. Xiao Su looked at Gentleman Sheng coldly. "Does your Majesty think you're free just because you're like this?" What does the King of England think?" Gentleman Sheng hesitated and couldn't help but ask. "Isn't this the best time to distinguish between the loyal officials and the traitorous ones?" Xiao Su said indifferently. Gentleman Sheng finally reacted and patted his head. "The King of England is right. How can we miss this opportunity?" Chu Qingyan felt that Gentleman Sheng had been tormented by state affairs until he became stupid. At this time, Turin walked in quickly. Chapter 363. What's the matter? Xiao Su asked as soon as Turin entered the room. Turin bowed to Junzi Sheng before turning to his master. Huling has successfully taken down King Jing and King Jin's armies. Their forces are now gathered in Yi City, which is not far from the capital. Hearing this, Gentleman Sheng clapped his hands and laughed. "That's great. Two of our biggest problems have been dealt with. King Ying's foresight is truly divine." Xiao Su ignored his compliment. "Your Majesty, let the two armies stand still for now. Find a general you can trust to integrate them into your own army." Junzi Sheng understood what he meant. Now that the two armies were mixed together, there were many people who were dissatisfied or wantonly trying to sow discord. At this moment, other than appeasing them, Junzi Sheng also had to make them submit willingly. Junzi Sheng thought for a moment and ordered Lao Bai to do the job. Within 2 days, Xiao Su dealt with all the messengers who came and went. Xiao Su's decisiveness won Junzi Sheng's admiration. Back then, Junzi Sheng was just standing on one side of the battlefield and could only see the results of Xiao Su's orders. Now that he was in the same situation, he realized that Xiao Su was a man of strategy. He was so calm that he had the power to decide life and death. "King of England, if it weren't for you, I would have become a prisoner by now." Junzi Sheng sighed. His royal uncles were all cunning old foxes. He was no match for them at all. "Your Majesty, it's too early to be happy. Your final opponent is really coming." As soon as Xiao Su finished speaking, Turin entered the hall again. "Master, King Zhe has brought his army to Fu City in the name of protecting the emperor," Turin reported. "Fu City?" Junzi Sheng was shocked. "Doesn't that mean they've reached the capital?" Turin nodded. "How many soldiers does King Zhe have with him?" Xiao Su was very calm. There was no sign of panic. 10,000 cavalry and 70,000 infantry, Turin replied. Xiao Su nodded and then turned to say to Jun Zisheng, "Your Majesty can send an official representing your status to negotiate with Zhe Wang and use the chips in your hands to make a deal with him." "That's right. Prince Zhe's favored son is in our hands." Moreover, Prince Zhe dared to send troops because he was relying on the name of protecting the emperor. If we were fine, and Prince Jin and Prince Jing had already fallen from power, he probably wouldn't have the guts to go against the capital. Immediately, Gentleman Sheng calmed down. He had 3 times as many soldiers as Zhe King, including the hundreds of thousands of soldiers he had subdued. "Even if King Zhe doesn't agree, our men are more than enough to beat him back." Gentleman Sheng was a little carried away. Xiao Su shook his head. "Let's not touch Prince Jing and Prince Jin's men for now. Before they've completely surrendered, they're useless." Instead of being of any use, he was worried that they would be instigated. "It's best to persuade Prince Zhe to surrender." Gentleman Sheng was stunned. He felt that Xiao Su's words made sense, so he sent someone to deal with this matter. However, before that, he said with some hesitation, "King of England, can I borrow an expert negotiator from you?" The people I have aren't outstanding enough. I'm afraid they'll mess things up. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but shake her head when she heard this. She really didn't know how this gentleman Sheng became an emperor. He didn't have anyone, and his ability was lacking. Fortunately, this time, he met her big ice cube. Otherwise, with his ability, the entire Junlan would have been divided up. Turan, arrange someone for him. Xiao Su didn't care about this small matter and assigned someone to him. Only then did gentleman Sheng heave a sigh of relief. Night fell. The side hall was still brightly lit, as if it was daytime. Gentleman Sheng had already gone back to rest. Chu Qingyan walked in with a bowl of soup. Big ice cube, it's very late. Drink something to fill your stomach. She handed the bowl to him. Xiao Su took it and glanced at her. In the future, it's so late. You don't have to do these things. Just instruct the servants to do it. She knew that the big ice cube was concerned about her. She shrugged and smiled nonchalantly. Anyway, you're all busy. I don't have much to do. I can still help if it's within my ability. When Xiao Su heard this, he handed the secret letter in his hand to her. Then read this letter for me. Chu Qingyan was speechless at the way he gave her orders so easily. However, she still took it and read it without much thought. At noon, King Ping led his troops and camped in Mount Pan 30 miles away. He's already suspicious of the rescue mission. When she read this, Chu Qingyan's attention was immediately drawn. She murmured, Big ice cube, if King Ping finds out that all this is fake, will he do something desperate? Xiao Su put down the bowl and shook his head. No, King Ping is cautious and cherishes his reputation. He won't be impulsive and take the risk to send his troops. Then what will he do? After all, 2 out of the 4 kings have already been killed. Chu Qingyan was very curious. This situation seemed to be very advantageous to them, but she felt that they shouldn't let their guard down. If you were King Ping, what would you do? Xiao Su threw the question back at her. Chu Qingyan was stunned. If she were King Ping, what would she do? King Jing and King Jin suddenly went missing. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. The new emperor was held hostage. Those thieves didn't make any demands. Everything was dead silent. Now, only King Zhe and he had besieged the capital city. However, King Zhe didn't make any moves. This made him feel even more uneasy. If I were King Ping, I'd choose to join forces with King Zhe. King Jing and King Jin suddenly went missing. It's very likely that they've met with mishap. 120,000 soldiers aren't enough to fill the gaps between the capital city's teeth. Therefore, joining forces might be the most appropriate choice for now. Chu Qingyan focused on putting herself in King Ping's shoes. She thought about his identity and his way of doing things and came to this conclusion. Chu Qingyan, who was seriously thinking, did not notice that Xiao Su's gaze on her had a hint of admiration. She was indeed his woman to be able to think of this. But if that's the case, won't King Zhe join forces with King Ping? If that was the case, Chu Qingyan was worried. At this time, the timing is critical, Xiao Su said profoundly. Chu Qingyan didn't understand what he meant, but she soon understood. In the middle of the night, Junzi Sheng suddenly appeared at the entrance of the side hall. His face was slightly red and he looked very excited. Chu Qingyan looked at Junzi Sheng who was striding over. If his identity wasn't taken into consideration, he was indeed a very scholarly and handsome man. It was hard to associate him with the monarch of a country. However, after interacting with him for the past few days, this person wasn't without any redeeming qualities. At least when he gave orders, he didn't hesitate at all. He vividly displayed the cold and emotionless side of a monarch. King of England, King Zhe has surrendered. Junzi Sheng exclaimed happily before he even reached the hall. Chu Qingyan widened her eyes and looked at the person beside her. No wonder Yu Daibing said that the timing was critical. If King Zhe had already surrendered, then whatever King Ping wanted to do next would be within their control. Chapter 364. Xiao Su nodded calmly. Gentleman Sheng was stunned for a moment. His joy was quickly frozen. He smiled embarrassedly. It seemed that he already knew, or rather, everything was already under his control. Chu Qingyan snickered. Her big ice cube was so smart and powerful that it blinded Gentleman Sheng's eyes. He had already seen Xiao Su's indifference, so Gentleman Sheng no longer hesitated. For the sake of the next plan, he did not put down his pride like he did a few days ago. Instead, he asked directly, "What should we do next?" King Ping is different from the other three imperial uncles. He is not easy to deal with. Your Majesty, you don't have to worry about this. Soon, King Ping will take action when he sees that the situation is not good. At that time, we just have to act according to the circumstances. Xiao Su's expression was indifferent. He did not get carried away by the fact that he had already recovered 3/4 of his troops. Instead, he became more cautious and his expression became colder. Jun Zixing originally wanted to ask a few more questions, but because Xiao Su didn't seem to want to talk about it, Jun Zixing gave up. During this period of time, she had already seen his remarkable abilities, so there was no need for her to be worried or suspicious. Okay, we will wait for the King of England to give the order. After saying this, Gentleman Sheng was ready to leave. Ever since Xiao Su reminded him to pay attention to the movements of the civil and military officials, he asked his trusted aides to pay close attention. As expected, he found that many officials were secretly colluding with the four kings. He listened to Xiao Su's suggestion and suppressed the anger in his heart. He first monitored these people. After the rebellion of the four kings was over, he would catch all of them in one fell swoop. This way, he would have the power to deter them. Not only that, Xiao Su also suggested that he could use this opportunity to recruit some core officials to fill the vacancies of these officials when the time came, so that the entire imperial court would not be suddenly empty. Therefore, during this period of time, he did not dare to let his guard down. He knew that this was a real challenge for him since he ascended the throne. He felt the surging excitement and eagerness to try. It could be said that if he succeeded this time, it would be a reform of the imperial court and the entire Junlan state. It would be a great change of blood. For him, it would be a new beginning. But the moment he left the side hall, he couldn't help but turn back and look at the dark palace. If it weren't for the fact that Xiao Su was from Sichuan, he would definitely have poached him to Junlan. However, as soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he shook his head and rejected it. Such a person was too strong, and he probably wouldn't be able to suppress him. After Jun Zixing left, Chu Qingyan walked to Xiao Su. She tilted her head and asked in confusion, "Why didn't you tell Jun Zixing about your next plan?" Hearing this, Xiao Su put down the letter in his hand and crossed his hands on the table. The candlelight cast a dim yellow halo on his body, but it made his face a little hazy, and his expression couldn't be seen clearly. His voice was a little indifferent and cold, but not too cold. King Ping is ruthless and scheming, but in the eyes of the people of Junlan State, he is a gentle and virtuous king. Do you know why? Because he is good at disguising. In her eyes, sanctimonious people don't reveal their true colors because they're too good at pretending. However, Xiao Su shook his head, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. His smile was very faint. It's not just that. It should be said that his reach is very long. He has spies all over Junlan State, so whatever kind of reputation he wants, he only needs to give an order, and someone will spread it for him. Moreover, he has done so many dirty things. There is no wall in the world that doesn't have a crack, but he hid them all. This proves that he has reached the point where he can cover the sky with one hand. It's only because he cherishes his reputation that he wants to take the throne in the name of being virtuous. Otherwise, with his ability, Jun Zixing wouldn't be his opponent at all. Chu Qingyan was very surprised after hearing this. What he meant was that King Ping's men were hiding around Jun Zisheng, so every time Big Ice Cube took a step forward, he would delay telling Jun Zisheng the next step to prevent King Ping's spies around Jun Zisheng. How did Big Ice Cube know everything? Moreover, she was even more surprised that Big Ice Cube was willing to explain so much to her. The person who usually didn't talk much was no longer so stingy with his words. As if reading her mind, Xiao Su said disapprovingly, "It's just ordinary reasoning ability. Plus, I've seen so much, so I'm used to it. At the same time, it's also to let you learn more." Big Ice Cube, should I take in a few more subordinates? Then I'll have my own manpower. Chu Qingyan's eyes were shining. When the time came, she could also send them to various places to help her collect information. Xiao Su couldn't help but hold his forehead. This little girl seemed to be concerned about the wrong thing. The news of King Zhe being subdued was suppressed. King Ping didn't receive any news about it. After a day, King Ping couldn't hold it in anymore. He sent a letter to King Zhe, wanting to discuss cooperation. Currently, there were only two paths in front of King Zhe. One was to meet force with force, and the other was to form an alliance. Actually, there was another option, which was to return to his fief. However, if Jun Zisheng regained control of the three kings' military forces and took back his fief, then it would be his turn. No matter how he went back and forth, it would be a dead end. However, he wouldn't choose to meet force with force. Firstly, he was outnumbered. Secondly, it wouldn't be proper for him to obtain the throne this way. It wouldn't be in line with his title as the virtuous king. 2 days later, King Ping arrived at the Sanli Pavilion as promised. He only brought 100 light cavalry to show King Zhe's sincerity. He knew his brother well. Although he was cautious and timid, he wasn't afraid that his brother would plot against him. If something happened to him, then his brother would be even more isolated and helpless. If he didn't show up personally, his army wouldn't listen to anyone else's orders. Therefore, it was better to have one more ally than one more enemy. King Ping sat in the Sanli Pavilion and waited for half a cup of tea's time. Then, he heard a series of footsteps approaching from afar. He raised his eyebrows and turned around. He was about to welcome them with a smile when he saw who it was. "Your Majesty." His voice was filled with disbelief and fear. "Fifth Imperial Uncle, how have you been?" Jun Zisheng smiled brightly as if the person in front of him wasn't a traitor, but an elder he respected. King Zhe, who was standing beside Jun Zisheng, had a complicated expression. "Fifth Imperial Brother, we've all lost. We've all lost to this brat. The person we've always looked down on turned around and bit us in the end. He did it quietly and with superb methods that caught us off guard. No, I didn't lose. You're the ones who lost." With his shrewdness, he connected the dots as soon as he saw Jun Zisheng. King Ping's expression suddenly turned ferocious. He no longer looked gentle and humble. Chapter 365. Fifth Imperial Uncle, are you still going to put up a final struggle? Jun Zisheng looked at King Ping. This person whom he had respected since he was young was now standing in front of him with a ferocious expression. The collapse of his faith was far more serious than the disappointment he felt at that moment. King Ping sneered and waved his hand to give the order. 100 light cavalry soldiers surrounded him. The atmosphere suddenly turned tense and a battle could break out at any moment. "Jun Zisheng, I won't admit defeat so easily." As soon as King Ping finished speaking, his subordinates immediately rushed toward Jun Zisheng. Jun Zisheng did not expect him to still want to fight back at this point. It was like throwing an egg against a rock. Jun Zisheng took 2 steps back. The soldiers hiding in the dark immediately showed themselves and surrounded King Ping and his men. Even if King Ping's men were powerful and could fight against 10 people at once, they could not stop so many people from taking turns to fight. King Ping's men fell one by one. His battle robe was also stained with blood. He seemed to have gone berserk. The sword in his hand was like a scythe, harvesting lives. Soon, he killed his way out of the encirclement. However, he did not run away. Instead, he approached Jun Zixing step by step. Jun Zixing, even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 people in front of him were immediately killed. He turned around and walked toward Jun Zixing, killing the 3 guards in front of Jun Zixing one after another. Although King Ping had a reputation for being a virtuous and elegant man, his martial arts were taught by the most famous swordsman in Junlan. No one in the royal family could be his opponent. In addition, he had lost his mind and was probably invincible. Gentleman Sheng's expression froze. He drew his sword and wanted to fight him. However, at that moment, Turan appeared in front of him and said to Jun Zixing, "My master has sent his subordinates to protect your majesty. Please step back." Jun Zixing retracted his sword. After Turan finished speaking, he immediately blocked King Ping with his sword. King Ping's martial arts were powerful. However, Turan was from the fierce cavalry and was the leader of the secret guards. How could ordinary people compete with his martial arts? King Ping's men were all killed. Only King Ping was left. Therefore, when the 2 of them fought, everyone held their breaths and waited. After the 45th exchange, King Ping spat out a mouthful of blood. He knelt on the ground and supported himself with his sword. At that moment, the guards immediately surrounded him to prevent him from hurting anyone else. He looked up and looked at Turan in disbelief. "You're not from Junlan." "That's right. I don't belong to Junlan." The Earth Spirit did not deny it. King Ping was surprised once again. "You're from Shaolai Cavalry." Earth Spirit's calm expression changed slightly, but he quickly looked at King Ping calmly. "I heard that King Ping is knowledgeable and knowledgeable. Now that I've met you today, you're indeed right. Jun Zixing Zixing. Jun Zixing Zixing. Jun Zixing." At this moment, King Ping, who had had enough of laughing, looked at Jun Zixing and said slowly, "I was wondering how you could come up with such a meticulous plan with your ability. It was so well connected that you took into account everyone's personality and schemes. However, if it's that person, then everything makes sense now. I didn't expect you to have such a capable helper. That person does have the ability to strike fear in people." Jun Zixing pursed his lips. "But you still lost in the end." "Yes, I lost. But I didn't lose to you. I lost to him." King Ping chuckled. He clenched his fingers and held the hilt of his sword to prevent it from slipping. He knew that he was at the end of his rope. He raised his head slightly and met Jun Zixing's gaze. He laughed self-deprecatingly. "Zixing, do you know that if your father didn't take advantage of the situation back then, I would be the one sitting on the throne now? Unfortunately, he was too cunning. He bribed my father's men to change the imperial edict." Jun Zixing's eyes darkened. But for so many years, he didn't enjoy a single day of peace after sitting on that throne. He spent his days busy and anxious. Jun Zixing smiled. King Ping smiled complacently. "That's because he deserves it. All these years, I haven't stopped causing trouble for him. I ordered people to cut corners when the West River burst its banks. I ordered people to steal the disaster relief funds in Deer City. I ordered people to spread the rumors about your father. I was the one who instigated the unrest in the 4 kings all these years. It's impossible for him to live in peace." Jun Zixing clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "King Ping, why don't you think about the people of Junlan? Those are all innocent people." Mockery flashed across King Ping's face. "Think about it. If it wasn't for your father, I would be the one in charge of Junlan now." Jun Zixing closed his eyes, then opened them and said to him, "This is all your one-sided story. I don't believe that my father would do such a thing. If you have anything else to say, save it for the trial." "Ha, a warrior can be killed but not humiliated. Since I lost to you today, I have no intention of leaving this place alive. As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled out the sword from the ground and slid it across his neck without any hesitation. Blood spurted out and his eyes rolled back. He could no longer hold the hilt of the sword and fell to the ground. I didn't lose, I didn't lose. His last glance landed in the direction of the palace. If it wasn't for Xiao Su's intervention and the help of Xiao Lai cavalry, this country would have been his sooner or later. As long as his army entered the capital, King Jing, King Jin, and King Zhe wouldn't be his match at all. Jun Zixing was already a mere figurehead. But he calculated everything, but he didn't expect Jun Zixing to seek Xiao Su out. Therefore, he didn't lose. It was just that life was unfair and his luck wasn't on his side. Jun Zixing heard King Ping's words as soon as he turned around. He didn't turn back. When he heard the sound of a blade piercing into flesh with his eyes closed, his eyebrows trembled slightly and finally calmed down. Your Majesty, this king has listened to your words and brought old Five here. When will you let this king meet with my son? Zhe Wang didn't look at the person lying in the pool of blood. Instead, he asked Ji Junxing nervously. Fourth Imperial Uncle, you'll be able to see the heir when you return to the capital. Jun Zixing suddenly felt a little tired. He waved his hand and ordered someone to take King Zhe away. King Zhe wanted to say more, but when he saw Jun Zixing's dark expression, he shut his mouth and left with the guard with a sigh. Clean up King Ping's body and return to the capital. Jun Zixing ordered, but his voice was a little hoarse. Everything was clearly over. Everyone had either been executed or imprisoned, but why did his heart feel heavier and heavier? He thought that he would feel relieved after solving Jun Lan's crisis, but he couldn't feel happy at all. This was probably the biggest internal strife Jun Lan had ever had. He laughed at himself and sighed. Chapter 366. They returned to the court. As soon as Jun Zixing returned to the palace, he began to stir up trouble. The moment he appeared, all the officials were shocked. When they heard that Prince Jing and Prince Jin had rebelled and both had died, Prince Zhe had been arrested for insubordination, and Prince Ping had committed suicide out of fear of punishment, the entire situation changed in an instant. Before anyone could react, Jun Zixing issued imperial edicts one after another. All the civil and military officials in the court who had colluded with the four princes were exterminated and their families confiscated. The light punishment was banishment to the borders. The entire dynasty was in a state of panic. However, after the heavy punishment, Jun Zixing chose to let bygones be bygones. Many officials were instantly moved to tears of gratitude. The people also began to spread rumors that Jun Zixing was a wise and benevolent ruler. At this time, there were also rumors that he was a good ruler who knew how to appoint people and was a rare good emperor. This was because he had promoted many officials during this period and had also dug up many virtuous and elegant scholars to fill the vacancies. For the first time, the entire Junlan dynasty was peaceful. When Chu Qingyan heard the rumors that Hualing had gathered from the people, she pursed her lips. This Jun Zixing's methods were quite good. He gave a slap and rewarded a sweet date. Which of the officials wouldn't be moved? They wished they could cut open their hearts for him to see. However, she had to admit that Jun Zixing had improved a lot during this period of time compared to before. He was also becoming more tactful in handling matters. She heard that although the Junlan Empire was still a little unstable, at least it was slowly getting on the right track. She tilted her head and looked at the person sitting in the hall reading a book. She touched her chin and suddenly said, "Big Ice Cube, I realized that if you don't want to be Lord, there's another position that suits you very well." Oh. Xiao Su looked away from the book and looked at her with some interest. "Tell me about it." "Educating people," Chu Qingyan said with a smile. Xiao Su ignored her. "I'm not interested." Chu Qingyan's interest was piqued. She ran in front of Jiang Yi and placed her hands on the table. She rested her chin on top of it and continued, "The education I'm talking about is not as simple as teaching people how to read and write. The disciples we're taking in are not ordinary people, they're all famous people from all over the world. As for you, you're teaching them how to survive in this world. You're teaching them how to deal with deception and deceit. You're teaching them how to become invincible. Xiao Su found it funny. The world is chaotic enough, and you want these people to cause more trouble? Chu Qingyan pondered for a moment and felt that big ice cube was right. It seemed like she was overthinking things. However, Chu Qingyan was in high spirits again. She took away the ice ore book in his hand, then clenched her little fist and extended it in front of him. She said in a serious and official tone, "Then what does His Royal Highness have to say about helping Junlan achieve a comprehensive victory this time?" Xiao Su looked at the little fist in front of him and the corner of his mouth twitched. "If you're very free, you can go out first. Take 10 steps forward, then turn left for 20 steps. Do what?" Chu Qingyan was a little confused by his unscripted behavior. "Practice boxing with your subordinates." Xiao Su leaned back in his chair and took the book she had taken away. He leisurely flipped the page to the paragraph he had just read. Chu Qingyan retracted her little fist and shook her head. She muttered to herself, "This person is too boring. He doesn't even know how to joke. In the future, I'll be bored to death by him. I'd better go play with Huling and the others." With that said, Chu Qingyan prepared to leave the hall to see the others. But when Xiao Su heard her muttering to herself, his entire face froze. It had only been a few months, and she was already disdainful of him. He didn't know whether to say that her childish words carried no harm or that she was extremely daring. "Come back." She had already walked to the door, but his cold voice called her back. But Chu Qingyan, who was familiar with his temper, wasn't shocked by his aura at all. Or rather, she was already immune to it. She fearlessly lay back in her original position and asked with a fearless expression, "Have you already figured out how to answer my question?" Xiao Su looked at her deeply, ignoring the sparkling anticipation in her eyes. Instead, he bent his knuckles and tapped the table beside him. "Lin, 50 pieces." What was going on? Why did the style change from an interview to a punishment all of a sudden? "I know how to write. Recently, I've almost become a professional calligrapher. Please let me go." Chu Qingyan scrunched up her face as she bitterly begged for mercy. "Your words are too ugly, keep practicing." Xiao Su ignored her pitiful appearance and said without a change in his tone, "You can't be like this." Chu Qingyan looked at the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone in front of her and was about to go crazy. There's no room for discussion. Seeing her stomp her feet, Xiao Su felt much better. Chu Qingyan looked at the person whose expression didn't change. She could only scratch her head and pick up the brush to write. Who told her to be at the bottom of the food chain? After she wrote down a few words, she looked left and right. It was clearly quite good. After being spurred on by the large ice cube, it was already several times better than the dog crawling from before. However, she didn't dare argue with him, otherwise the punishment wouldn't be this little. At this time, Huling came in. When he saw the little princess with the bitter face of the Lin character, he looked away without any surprise and said to his master, "Master, everything has been prepared. We can set off at any time." Xiao Su nodded. "That's right, Master, Her Majesty Junlan is holding a celebration banquet tonight and has invited us to go together." Huling mentioned this matter. Chu Qingyan paused. It seemed like only Xiao Laiqi dared to ignore the invitation of the ruler of a country like this. This feeling, it really was great. "We'll talk about it later." Xiao Su turned a page and said in a calm voice. "Yes. Speak of the devil. Her Majesty has arrived." With that, Junzi Sheng led people into the side hall. Chu Qingyan was very surprised that Junzi Sheng would take time out of his busy schedule to visit the large ice cube. Wasn't this person supposed to be dealing with the mess left behind by the fourth prince? Junzi Sheng walked towards Xiao Su as soon as he entered. As he walked, he dismissed everyone's salutations. He was in high spirits. Although his steps were still hurried, he didn't have the worried expression from before. People were in high spirits when faced with happy events. This was the most appropriate way to describe Junzi Sheng. King of England, we listen to your suggestion. Punish them, then show mercy. As expected, those restless officials settled down. Your move was really good. Junzi Sheng talked about national affairs as soon as he opened his mouth. Although his eyes were bloodshot, his complexion was very good. Your Majesty is too kind. Compared to Junzi Sheng's enthusiasm, Xiao Su could be said to be a pool of cold water. However, this didn't dampen Junzi Sheng's joy this time. He asked, King of England, tonight, in order to thank you and your subordinates for your help, we will hold a banquet in the front courtyard. How about we all join in the fun? Chu Qingyan, who was practicing calligraphy on the side and listening to the two talk, couldn't help but raise her brows when she heard this. She looked at the person beside her. Chapter 367. She knew that Big Ice Cube didn't like this kind of social gathering, but now that the Emperor had personally invited him, it should be hard for Big Ice Cube to refuse. But she didn't want Big Ice Cube to attend the banquet. First, there shouldn't be only them at the banquet. There should be civil and military officials and relatives of the Emperor. If they recognized them and attracted enemies, wouldn't the gains not make up for the losses? Second, they had been delayed in Junlan for too long. It was time to set off. They would definitely drink tonight. Not to mention that Big Ice Cube's body couldn't touch wine. If Hualing and the other meritorious officials got drunk, how could they set off tomorrow? But Xiao Su didn't seem to notice the little fellow beside him winking at him. He said leisurely, Thank you, Your Majesty, for the banquet. I'm deeply honored. Hearing Xiao Su's words, Gentleman Sheng was relieved. He knew that Xiao Su had an urgent matter, but he didn't know what it was. So he was worried that the palace servants wouldn't be able to convey it to him, so he put down those important matters and made a special trip. This time, Xiao Su had helped him a lot. It was reasonable for him to thank him properly. So after setting a time, Gentleman Sheng left the hall in a relaxed manner. When only they were left in the hall, Chu Qingyan put down her brush and said helplessly, Big Ice Cube, are you really going to attend their banquet? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Did this prince say I was going? Chu Qingyan choked. Didn't you say you were deeply honored? Is thanking me the same as accepting the invitation? Xiao Su glanced at her, his eyes full of suspicion. It can be seen that your comprehension ability is still not good. Later, this prince will have Mu Ling find a few military books for you to study and train your intelligence. Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. Big Ice Cube, I'm not the only one who thinks so. Gentleman Sheng must also think you're going to the banquet. So the two of you are equally stupid. Xiao Su didn't feel like he was criticizing the emperor of a country at all. He looked at her with disdain. Chu Qingyan felt that her intelligence was deeply despised. But under such circumstances, by right, such words were equivalent to accepting someone else's invitation. However, she couldn't be so sure about this because her Big Ice Cube often didn't play by the rules. This was the charm of language. But the Big Ice Cube didn't accept the invitation. Didn't that mean? Chu Qingyan immediately looked at him with sparkling eyes. Hualing, Xiao Su's gaze swept past Chu Qingyan and looked at the subordinate standing by the side. This subordinate is here. Hualing took a step forward. Inform everyone that we will leave the imperial palace in 2 hours. Do not alarm anyone, Xiao Su said in a deep voice. Yes. Hualing's face lit up with joy. She immediately responded and left the hall. Chu Qingyan clapped her hands and beamed. I can finally leave this place and go to Jiang Kingdom. The corners of Xiao Su's mouth curled up slightly. On this day, the Junlan Imperial Palace was in a state of chaos. No one noticed that a few people were missing in a certain hall. When red silk covered the entire palace, palace lanterns were hung up high. At the palace gates, there was an endless stream of officials. Handsome men and beautiful women could be seen everywhere. Everyone's faces were brimming with joy, and it was extraordinarily lively. This could be said to be the first time the Junlan Imperial Palace was so lively since the previous emperor passed away. Gentleman Xing sat on the main seat and was looking at the officials and their families in high spirits. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that the couch on his right was empty. This was the seat he had prepared for Xiao Su. Why wasn't there a single person? Could it be that something went wrong? He immediately ordered Lao Bai beside him. Go and see why the King of England and the others haven't arrived yet. Lao Bai immediately led people to investigate. After half a cup of tea's time, Gentleman Sheng was listening to the zither music below. Suddenly, he saw Lao Bai walking over with a flustered expression. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Where is he? Gentleman Sheng put away the smile on his face and asked coldly. Lao Bai immediately reported, Your Majesty, the King of England and the others have left. Gentleman Sheng was slightly taken aback. Recalling his answer in the side chamber today, he couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. This person is too treacherous. He lied to me. No, it's not really a lie. How should I put it? This person is too cunning. Lao Bai couldn't help but ask, Your Majesty, do you need me to chase them back? Gentleman Sheng raised his hand and waved it. No need. You can't keep someone who wants to leave even if you want to. He helped the Junlan Imperial Palace survive the crisis, and I helped him leave successfully. We're even. Yesterday, he had already given the clearance token to Xiao Su. As long as he had this token, he could enter and leave the Junlan Imperial Palace at will without being interrogated. This would help him go to the Jiang Kingdom. Lao Bai retreated after hearing this. Gentleman Sheng picked up the wine cup on the table and looked in the direction of the Jiang Kingdom. He sighed with emotion. Xiao Su, you're too smart. Don't blame the Sichuan Emperor for being so wary of you. This time, I made things difficult for you, but I don't regret doing so. However, if one day I ascend to the throne, I hope you and I won't be enemies. He looked in the direction of the Jiang Kingdom and drank the wine in his cup. Such an opponent was too powerful and brilliant. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Otherwise, the Junlan Imperial Palace wouldn't be able to be schemed against. At this time, the Junlan Imperial Palace was filled with singing and dancing. It was extraordinarily lively. In contrast, Chu Qingyan and the others were extremely quiet because they were walking on the official road. The night was too dark, and the weather was extremely cold. Ordinary people wouldn't stroll outside at night. Chu Qingyan curled up in the quilt and wrapped herself tightly. She looked a little conflicted. When I was in the Junlan Imperial Palace, I wanted to leave all kinds of ways. Now that I've finally gotten my wish and left, I miss it a little. Xiao Su flicked the wick on the table to make the flame brighter. He raised his eyebrows slightly. If you want to stay, let Hu Ling send you back. Chu Qingyan shook her head. I just miss the furnace in the palace. Can't I use it anywhere? If it weren't for the fact that she wanted to kill Juemei's prestige in the princess residence, she wouldn't have let Mu Ling take out those Hu Ling. Now, they were all in the princess residence. After they were busy with the internal strife in the Junlan Imperial Palace, they forgot to prepare new furnaces. She arranged the remaining furnaces for Ethereal and her mother to take care of these two patients who had just recovered from serious illnesses. Big Ice Cube didn't object to her arrangement, but they felt a little apologetic and wanted to send the furnaces back. However, they were rejected by Xiao Su. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. Anyway, Mu Ling had already sent people to make a new batch of furnaces. She would be able to enjoy the warmth of the fire soon. Just as she was distracted, the person in front of her moved to her side. She looked at him blankly, but heard him say, "Reach out." It was so cold that he wanted her to reach out of the quilt. Was she sure she hadn't said something wrong before punishing her? But she still obediently reached out her hand. He reached out to hold her hand. She was slightly startled. In an instant, she felt a warm current flow from their intertwined palms into her body. She pursed her lips and smiled. Big Ice Cube was using his internal energy to warm her. But she suddenly felt that something was wrong. Big Ice Cube couldn't use his internal energy. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.